I'm gonna keep rolling with this train of thought in the current live series where I'm not sure I'm gonna title yet, but I'll be appearing the same way and I'll title it something coherent so it can appear as one thing. But they say like most things. So according to Arthur Avalon, is that this existence is was called this existence was called great. It's called immortal, deathless, because of at least two things. Because this existence wastes not, and also because this fashions breath. There's no mind without some all any experience of having a mind, a sense of self, but that to a mind, and sense of other, that to a mind. It's contingent upon and correlated with something to do with matter. Even as much, sometimes I think when people say woo woo, they think that what that's referencing for that's mocking, but also a reality, is when people get fixated in the mind, that is the psyche, that is also the spirit, that is also the mentation, the mental faculty, as though did not correspond to matter. So such as to forget about, to cast, to shirk off duty, or to not be appreciating time, place, and season as matter goes, is to be woo woo. But it is true, according to Arthur Avalon, is that there's no experience of mind without corresponding to matter, but also there's no experience of matter that's not facilitated by mind. Because what could you experience of matter if you weren't aware to do so? But that too, there's no experience of mind and thereby matter without breath, but also breath without matter. There's no experience of any of that without breath. And also that too, breath is wasteless. Near about the closest thing we ever do to being immortal, that is wasteless and nearly deathless, as mortal beings, humans, is to breathe, according to Osho, because your body breathe. The only thing that's really the only thing, if you have a real master on your hands, how would you know you have a master? The way you know you have a master is that they're close to unerring, or they're accurate, and they're effective. A master is effective. Never are you more effective than when you're employing breath or having breath employed properly. So one of the most masterful things you might see is to sing, and you can't be great at singing without breathing well. But also, I extrapolate that almost anything else you do, play a sport, um, uh, aim a projectile, damn near dance, draw. I would even say maybe even IT. Like some people that do IT, like it can get stressful, and they have to they can be very difficult physically and mentally to do IT. I imagine that the best way to get past that would be breathing, if anything. So the greatest thing, the nearest thing that we'll do to being like beyond this life, or even a master in this life, is to breathe well. So much as we breathe well, but there's a but 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 so this existence is wasteless, nearly wasteless, and also that is efficient, economical, economy par excellence. So when you're saying divine, you're almost saying economy at once. What does divine mean? Divine means economy and grace, but grace is a form of economy, because when you're breathing right, that's very graceful, but it's also very economical. But it also corresponds with different ranges of your mind, because any activity you would do, well or not, corresponds to a mode of breathing, whether that be suitable or not. Um, and this life, it's wasteless, but it also affords us blessings, but it also has needs too, because everyone has a need and they have an interest, even this existence itself, to sustain itself, such that there's something of when we're afforded free will. Well, it's called, even in the great books, it's conceded we are afforded free will. We're afforded free will for a purpose. There's something that come with that. There's a purpose for the free will. I think it's because for life to be viable, sustainable, we have to actually be engaged. But to be engaged, we have to suffer and lose, and potentially win and lose. And that amounts to choice, such that there's nothing that we may experience for ourselves without being presented an indication at one point, whether consciously, unconsciously, or subconsciously, but we can feel it, such that things are coded, that is to color coded, prior to the information age. You can't actually say prior to the digital age, because even when we were yet fish, essentially, as our hands, that is phalanges, the bones of your hands, I think they're the carpals, like the carpal, and then the fingers, the digits, the appendages are the phalanges. The bones of your feet, I think they're the tarsals, but the appendages of which the toes are also phalanges. Those, you notice that the phalanges, they're web like that, right? Reminiscent of a fin of a fish, but that too, the digits, that's what they're called, digits like that. So we've always been digital even when we were fish, because we had those phalanges, the digits like that. So I'm not saying there's anything unique about being in the digital age, but being in the information age, even prior to that, things had been yet coded in color in the environment. So I think that that color, it speaks to us, but also it communicates, because we're not only ourselves. You're taught that you're an individual, but you're actually this existence, and it is to you, and it communicates with itself too, from without and within. So sometimes when you have premonitions or dreams or insights or correspondence or correlations or serendipity, serendipity means like coincidence, but with meaning, providence. That is not only because you're that great, but also because you're this existence and it's communicating with you. You didn't have a premonition. This existence as you, that afforded you awareness, but also as you, with its own intentions of itself, for itself, as you and beyond you, was communicating with itself. And you perceive that interplay go on, but part of that is in color. So I think that in nature, when you see red, red is very transcendent, and it attends things that are transcendent. So when you see like leaves, that the leaves are the one, I think one of the most beautiful things is fall, but it's also a form of death. So those red leaves are transcending like that. Were you to see human, like say, were to see like the menses of a woman, that's red, but also transcended, because that's a threshold, a limit for her, like her activity, her sexual activity, or just her relating to other people, that can amount to her physical viability or jeopardy, her social viability or jeopardy, someone that she would be intimate with, their physical or social viability or jeopardy, then to her having children, their viability or jeopardy, and any one of those, man, woman, and child, their ability to live or not get to live, or suffer loss, can be affected, have meaning by the red menses of a woman. Then like if you have like a red berry in nature, that if I had to guess the color of something in nature, that would be red. It could be delicious when it's serving a person, or it could take someone out of here. But I think that red is very transcendent when you see in nature. Then too, blood. So part of the thing is that naturally in nature, we wouldn't see a lot of red. I don't think in nature we would see a lot of red. We would see red in nature, but not a lot of it. So I think that when you see red, like say heaven forbid a person were to see like that, the person that gave me this jacket, he said that he was at a shelter once, and there was a person doing ostensibly there might have been like someone attempting to harm themselves, and he didn't know that the human body could have that much of fluids in it. He didn't know that the human body could have that much fluid in it. And if you can just imagine like a scene like that, that someone that was actually like harming themselves, like the scene of what that would look like. There used to be a website on the internet. I'm not going to reference it because I don't know how young anyone might stumble upon this video, but that website, it would show you like back in the 90s what it looks like when people complete doing injury to themselves and others, and that would give you a reason not to play with something. Like I used to, like when I was in middle school, there were horrible things in my family. There's still horrible things in my family, just the dynamics of my family, the history of my family that I know about and don't know about, my nuclear family. But that was already at play when I was a child, and it was enough to be daunting and nearly crushing to a small child in middle school, because middle school is very formative because you're transitioning from a child to an adolescent and soon an adult, and some of the realities of an adult about like wanting to have like friends, and also things that are more than friends. When you're a child, you already have those interests and tastes and appetite, but you don't maybe have the opportunity or not to realize that, or maybe too much of an opportunity, heaven forbid. But it can get real even in middle school. But I would be having these thoughts that weren't, that weren't cool, like when I was a kid, because there was a lot of shit that wasn't cool, like, just different shit that wasn't cool. But my friend showed me that website about what that stuff looked like, and I knew from that point that he showed me that is that that stuff is nothing to play with, even in thought. So I didn't. I'm not saying I all the way was all the way a man about managing my thoughts, but that was really educational for me to see how that looks when someone actually does stuff like that. But I think that that might too be because a human being is not used to seeing that much red. It's not only that you would see that much body fluids, heaven forbid, if you saw a real scene on your hands or on someone's hands, heaven forbid, but also that you would see that much of the color red as you're not normally in nature. But when you too would see red in nature, it would be attended by things and people transitioning. An animal transition. There's certain things that are just simply profound to a human being. Death is one of them. Some things that will remind you of a mortality. Some things, like for example, our thought process is appreciated. All of our wants, likes, all of our, some things actually are transcended, right? All of our aversions, attractions. A lot of life is either attraction, repulsion, and sometimes indifference. All the way down to the chemical level. That's reality, attraction, repulsion, and indifference. But that is like to be neutral. But your uh, um, all that you are attracted to, that is aversion, that is aversion to you, repulsed by, and then something of what would make something indifferent or not. It has to do with your fear of death, according to Osho. That's the fundamental unifying principle of human behavior, and probably that too of animals, different degrees, is that human beings are simply afraid of death. But that too, human beings can't compart such that we are mortal. I think that it's interesting it's appreciate that when someone passes away, right? Someone dies, they don't actually know it because there's nothing to remember being alive or even experience death completely, because by that point a person ceased to exist, oblivion, no sense of yourself. But also it's appreciated that death is forever. So it's interesting, how long has existence existed before you were born? Is that near about as long as forever? And did you exist at all in that state? Did you really, were you dead before you were born? Or were you dormant before you were born within your ancestors? And was your first progenitor, who's also your ancestor, were they dead before they were born, or were they dormant before they were born, even as they're the first progenitor and specimen, like that? But then too, if you will ever be dead, is that too forever? And if that is for from that point on, at least forever, if that is forever and that is imminent, you are going to ostensibly die. How could you actually have an experience of being alive if one point you will imminently be dead, and that too is forever from that point? How may you have an experience of yourself? Part of avoiding the thought of death might be how that's possible. It might be part of how it's possible to be alive, to be conceived, to be how we are conceived, and maintain ourselves for being conceived, and will one day maybe cease or perish, but had once too been conceived. It might be by avoiding the idea of death and some of our impetus to procreate, to sustain our health, but also procreate progeny, children upon the earth who will then live, is part of also our fear of death. So some things are just simply compelling to a human being, such as the sight of death. But also, whenever we would be seeing death, and also that to a snake, like snakes have a visceral, primal impact on a human body or a human mind. And that too is a function of the fact that snakes likely would have not been far away from the prospect of death, but that too, dead bodies from death, because it said that dead bodies attract dead bodies. So wherever a dead body would occur in nature, there's likely still danger lurking there. If a person were to come upon a corpse in nature, that means serious, because not only is that death that body potentially putrid and morbid and decaying and disease ridden, but also whatever would have slaked it or slayed it could be present, or the dynamics in the cycles and variables that would place that thing at its death would still be attendant of that environment, that vicinity. So it's very significant that a human being would see a dead body, but also be averse to a dead body. And the color red likely would have attended different forms of transcendence, but also that too, death in nature, the color red. So I just want to point out how colors can have meaning based on our present and prior experience as human beings. I think the color blue is very it's like a color of tradition. Like, imagine, so you have things like dress blues, like in the military. The color blue is reminiscent of tradition, right? Imagine like you have someone imagine you just saw someone in a uniform, right? Like a military person in a uniform. If they have the color blue, I imagine the color blue would look a lot like tradition, like very formal, cool, but also long-standing. Such too is the sky, because the sky has been around for a long time, but it's been blue for this long. You could say that what is the most long-standing thing in the human experience, of even the living upon earth, any being, even the human beings, was actually more ancient in a deeper part of our experience than our present ability to reason, our present opposable thumb, our present appearance as human beings, our present way of dealing with things, and even prior to us being so part of, but also prior to us being primates, humans, primates, mammals, reptiles, maybe fish before that. Even some in before the deepest that you can go back is fungus, according to someone I met. Prior to fish, uh, um, uh, um, trees, bacteria, virus had been fungus. So maybe the oldest thing that you can, what may be older than dinosaurs. Older, can you imagine, can anyone on here imagine what would be living with us now that we also aren't viable without? That's a fundamental support of our life. That's actually as old as, or maybe as young as, but also as old as dinosaurs. What would that be? What's actually older than dinosaurs, but you can still easily come by it? That would be algae. I think algae would be about older than dinosaurs, because dinosaurs probably weren't away from algae, and they might have been part of their actual food chain, or probably the staple, the foundation of the staple of dinosaurs. If I had to guess, it would actually be algae, or along the lines of algae. That's the bottom. Sometimes people, they say the alpha and the omega, but people forget about the omega, the baseline of life, of a food source, of the food chain, the top and the bottom of the food chain at once, the alpha and omega. It might not be, he's so high in the sky, he's so high apple pie, he's got the whole wide world in his hands, he got the whole wide world in his hand. So you got him eating out your hand, right? The whole, what does that mean? The whole world in your hand. It means you got him eating out your hand, right? That might not be something invisible in the sky. That might have been algae. Algae got the whole world in his hands then and now. Dinosaurs, before dinosaurs, after dinosaurs, now. Crocodiles all through that, sharks all through that. So sharks are about as old as dinosaurs. It's appreciated. You got sharks in the ocean that are about as old, if not older, than dinosaurs. They might not ever even heard about dinosaurs. What's this dinosaur? Oh, that's cool. How old are they? No, the shark been there before that. It could be extrapolated. Sharks are one of your oldest formidable animals, but the actual food chain of sharks, if you break it down then and now, this many eons in the ocean, I bet the beginning of it would be algae, plankton, whatnot. But that's very similar to fungus, according to this person I met. I don't know who or what he was, just an interesting nondescript person I met, floating humor and then having a cool conversation. But throughout all that experience, so the oldest staple I can think of a life would be algae then and now. But the color that would have attended algae then and now would be the color blue, because I can imagine the sky would have been some form of blue a lot back even before the dinosaurs, and then the ocean would be reminiscent of blue. So when you see the color blue, it might symbolize long-standing tradition, and that's what that. So you can sometimes see these patterns in things if you just do reasoning, which is as good of a source as anything. But the reason I referenced that, I didn't also want to go all the way into color, but just to say that in an environment you can perceive things differently by training your awareness. So one thing is that normally when you go into an environment, you don't appreciate so I'm saying I said I referenced this to a person, a great person that I met. I've known him for like at least the last half year, but I had a great conversation with him a couple of days ago, and it attracted some cool people in that's already a cool venue. You can bump into damn near any. I'll say that some of the greatest rock and rollers that you can think of, that have walked the earth in the last century, that are still living, they're not necessarily they've come from the region where I'm at. And if you had to guess, like, and they ostensibly, I've met some very great people in the neighborhood, in the environment, that know of other great people that may get in and out of a vicinity. I can imagine that if they ever were interested to show up their face, they probably wouldn't show up their face anywhere. But if they had to send for something, if they had anything to do with anything, the least likely, but also the most likely that you would see anyone of any stature, of any greatness in your vicinity, it'd be the type of place where I met this person. It's not a place that's barred from the general public, but just the type of place where I met this person. But he was saying that I was telling him, I was like, damn, it's interesting, right? So you're in here, right? Everything's good to go. They got it dialed in. All the cool people, they would gravitate over here. They would spend money, this and that, the cool things, this and that. You can't anticipate damn near anything in here. But why is that chair in that corner like that? That chair, there's something different about that chair. Why is it tucked away like that? Why is that chair that strangely like that? So I told him is the same thing I had posted in the community, the forum of Casey Zander, YouTuber. He has a private forum that's available on his YouTube page, and I had engaged that, and I said there, he actually commented on that very post that I left in his forum, is that in an information age where everything is overlaid and also anticipated and entered into different forms of functions that can be anticipated. Most of our behavior can be anticipated quite accurately in the digital space, right? But would have the most meaning in a digital reality. You know, we're always in a digital reality, but in an information age and in a digital age before an information age, based on what we can do with our digits, the most significant, valuable piece of information, and information is power in any environment, would be the anomaly. What is out of place, or what is so much in place as to be out of place? So there's this little strange chair that was tucked away, and I said that to him. We had a cool conversation that got attention. Some cool people came. Then a very beautiful woman who a very beautiful woman in that place actually manifested in that strange chair. That was the only place available to sit, based on our conversation. That was interesting, based on the fact that I pointed that out to him. It started our conversation going like that. So anomalies are very meaningful, but sometimes you can't pick out the anomalies unless you're in the habit of training, but also detraining your awareness to what you're in the habit of. So one way would be if you go to a place and you appreciate the color yellow, because usually the color yellow has meaning, or just it would be different than what you would normally pick out, or to just simply appreciate patterns. It doesn't have to be the color yellow or any pattern at all, but just that you would appreciate a pattern, because a lot of times you're having your experience dictated for you. You're interested in what is presenting itself, or interested in presenting itself to you. But so from that, you're defaulting to your habit of awareness of being catered to, because we're being catered to with television, with information, with entertainment, even education is catering to us. Here you go. Here's all the answers that are going to be on the test. And here's what we need you to do on the test. And here's what you need to say in the paper. You're being catered to like that. Or you go to the gas station. Oh, try these. These are the new curly fries. You're being catered to, but also you're being trained to default, or to be passively aware. Even as you understand yourself to be aware, you're aware based on what you've been educated. That is, you were catered to though to in your education and a lot of your training. Even some of your training. Hey man, this is your new. I'm gonna need you to drop down and give me this and that. Yeah, but you're also having an interest in what I do. You're also somewhat catering to me, even as you're training me. So even when you're going somewhere and you're engaging your awareness based on your training, whether education or some other venue, you are catered to in your training. So your awareness is still by default, by that reasoning, it is still passive. Even as you understand yourself to be any profession or walk of life or even background, and even as you experience some of those different situations, it may have actually been a function of, if you were in a crucial situation, but you too were trained and accustomed to being catered to. You're coming through that may be a function of being catered to, your training, or being fortunate is that you could get through something while thinking and perceiving and being like a person that is passive. But one thing that would not be passive would be to challenge your own habit of awareness, and that would be to exert energy in deciphering, concocting, appreciating, conceiving what would be in a pattern first, and then an anomaly second, which is a greater pattern and part of a pattern, not independent of a pattern. The anomaly doesn't defeat or frustrate the pattern. It proves the pattern. It is the pattern. It is the meaning. It is the understanding. Is the anomaly. As the exception proves the rule. As the anomaly proves the pattern. As the leopard proves the print. But But so one would be the color yellow, just when it would appear, because you wouldn't normally default to that. Then would be any other color and what meaning you can find in that color. Then would be any other pattern in like combinations of colors, combination of pattern. Then to another form of appreciating an environment differently would be to appreciate your body. So when you go into an environment, you think you perceive it. What you perceive of the environment of any range of your senses, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your taste, and even to your touch, is only a small fraction of what those senses are capable of rendering, but that too of what you are in the habit of perceiving based on those senses, based on your background, which has largely been catered to in both your training and in different vicinities are catering to you. Hey man, where are we gonna set this up? And then when they walk through, we want them to see that. So you're catered to that whole time, but also you're dulled for being catered to. But to your body, your organs, they perceive more than what you're anticipated to perceive, and also that what you're accustomed to perceiving, though it's available to you. So I'll say that one thing is that, just like, so things go backward and forward. So I began this live stream saying that there's a YouTuber named Unk, saying that when you, there's a number, I think Unk something number, when you affect yourself, which is still your choice, your prerogative to choose how you will feel and what you will entertain of your own thoughts and also feelings. It may be a little bit different for male and female, if you're honest, because males have a different compartmentalization of emotion than females. That has to do, then I'm not talking about anatomically male, but psychologically male have a different gearing in because that's arbitrary to decide what is male and female, whether anatomically or psychically or emotionally or physically. That's anatomical, but more so male leaning, and the rigors and the duties that come with that are part of the onset. When we're born into a community, we're not born for our own sake, we're born for the community's sake. So what would make something male or female or different still serves a purpose, and that purpose is not different than the trajectory, I think, of what would be suitable for that mode of existing, whether male or female or different. The blessings of that, the proclivities of that, but also the function of that, they serve a purpose. And so male leaning is has a different experience of emotion, different facility with emotion, and different tolerance for experiencing emotion and expressing emotion than female. Female has different facility around communication that also has to do with emotion, such as that. I'm just saying is that we're emotional beings, human beings. We can't not be emotional, but it's likely and imminent that we may experience emotion differently, being male, female, and different than that. But that too, it's still, we still have a degree of choice within that. But such too, according to this YouTuber Unk something number, is that the soonest way, the best way, the most efficient way, the most potent way to impact others, to influence others, to be experienced by others, is to impact oneself, like with the emotions too, because we broadcast to the whole universe. I think anything we feel is also felt by the whole universe, because it is the whole universe. So, but that too, also to perceive through oneself is the best way to receive. So the best way to affect without is to affect within, but also the best way to perceive without is to perceive within. So sometimes you can do something like, imagine, so one of the things that separates the amateurs from the I don't think it's good to think of oneself as a professional driver, because then you think that you're done being careful or being aware or being prudent. But one thing that would separate a seasoned driver or not is to appreciate that there's a lot that you can't to know what a blind spot is. When you're a professional driver, you know that you have blind spots in your mirrors, and also in front of you you have different blind spots. To be aware of those blind spots and to adjust for them, and to like, you don't just have blind spots in your mirrors and in front of you, but you also have blind spots in situations. So if you're driving through a parking lot that's lined with cars on either side of you, you could potentially encounter a pedestrian of any stature, of any rank, of any speed, come out, or in another vehicle, come out from one of those positions or stalled, parked car or not. So when you're driving slowly through a parking lot, you're actually witnessing, engaging in calibrating and adjusting for it and engaging your very blind spot, because you're appreciating that as certain as you can see in front of you, as clear as broad daylight, there could be something you didn't anticipate, adjust for, or recognize, and you may not have a lot of time to adjust for it, so you adjust your speed. But that too, when you round a corner onto like say a side street, you turn onto a side street. The sooner you turn on a side street, but also as you're on a side street, you could also be engaged by someone that would cross that street, whether they were skillful or not, whether they were having the right of way or not. When you turn onto a street, you can soon likely expect that you damn well sometimes will have someone or something run out as you barely got onto a block. Or if you get onto a block and you have a reason to stop, you could also have a blind spot behind you, because someone could round that corner behind you and they don't know or have enough presence of mind to adjust for your being there. So you have blind spots in front of you and behind you, whether or not they have anything to do with your mirror. But also your awareness is such too, is that even as I would think I'm making this video, as clear as the light is in front of me, as the camera is in front of me, there's a range of my experience that I can't perceive in front of me, and also a range of being perceived that I can't perceive, because you would have different units, different dwellings in like an apartment, and they can perceive you in a range of view that you may not be aware of, like especially like bass. Like you think you're being quiet by lowering your voice, but you're actually louder because the bass it pierces structures more. That frequency does more than the high frequency. So you may not, just like you can't perceive what you can perceive because you might not be in the habit or you don't have that range of frequency in your senses. Also, there are things behind the threshold of your senses that can yet engage you as you cannot perceive. So just if sometimes if you're talking, you're opening your eyes, but you appreciate that you have blind spots even within your conscious awareness, even within your very vivid vision that you're accustomed, because we more so default to vision because it's so vivid. Even as clear as you think you see what's in front of you, if you can appreciate that there's a range that you can't see, both in a broader frequency or a lesser frequency, or a frequency that you're not accustomed to, that's perceptible to you, there can be blind spots in all that. But then also too, within all that that is within your frequency, that is conceivably perceptible to you, some of it is not within your RAS, reticular activation system, such as that you don't have the paradigm to see it. So it's in front of you as anything else is, but it's not part of your experience. So you're oblivious to it, because there could be something. There could be like an example that would be like a trap door. So if you're not trap is like trapping, but like a secret door. So that secret door is like that. It's actually not recognizable. It's, if you have experience with secret doors, there it is right there. It's perceptible to you. But if you're not accustomed to it or you don't have the background to see it, the paradigm, you gloss right over it, even as though you think you know it's in front of your face. There's no arguing with it in front of your face. But sometimes you don't also see what or how what is in front of your face. That's yet another blind spot. But just if you can appreciate that you're having those blind spots all the time, that's a degree of awareness. But another degree of awareness is to appreciate that your body, your organs that are facilitating your awareness, they can too experience some of that you can't see. So one way to perceive an environment would be to engage the senses differently, but also the body differently, such as to realize that the body is perceiving, but also experiencing and enjoying as you would be in a vicinity, but you can also perceive things just by feeling it. So one thing would be not just to go to an environment and pick out patterns, but pick out what you're feeling. That's the word for that is visceral. So the sensation of your own body is your visceral experience. And sometimes when things affect you, like it makes you queasy, sick to your stomach, scared or disgusted, that's an example of your body perceiving things on a different range, but it's actually more moving. Sometimes even what's more moving than seeing something traumatic or like really like heinous would be to feel something that's unsettling, because your body actually just saw potentially in latent state something more obscene or heinous than you can even imagine. Your body perceived the cause of that, or the subtle reality of that before it be full blown. Your body perceived that. So I'm just saying that's another range of awareness, is just what are you also feeling. But then too, I was saying that like I began this video talking about pheromones. Like, I broke out this bottle of cologne I got that's actually 25 years old, and it got 25-year-old pheromones. And I don't know if that's really like hella sexy or like real, like maybe like vintage. Like some things only get finer with time. Wine, I don't know if pheromones is one of that. But an example of that is that sometimes your body is it's perceiving things, but it's all communicating with the environment and with you. So I think that sometimes, like for example, it's appreciated. I was talking about the padmas on here, in that you have part of your body that correspond with different ranges of activity. According to Arthur Avalon, the spleen the spleen is responsible for the sensation of traveling on the out of body experience, or traveling on this plane differently than you normally do, and it might have to do with how you are able to. It feel like you go somewhere when you're dreaming. For intensive purposes, you may to some actual veritable degree travel in your sleep. Likely that would have to do with your spleen. Then your throat hears it, just like your voice. So you most things actually have a dual. All things are dual. This reality is dual, duplex. But most things, anything that would transmit, likely receive. You can imagine a smartphone that doesn't transmit and or doesn't receive, but that too your voice projects, but your voice may also hear. When you speak, the way you speak is a combination of the way that you have learned to speak, but you are continuing to learn to speak, but based on also how you're accustomed to speaking, based on your hearing, but also based on it's like, I made a video saying that you have hand-eye coordination, but it's likely that you also have hand-eye-heart coordination, because most things don't move or move you without your heart being involved. So how well you're able to have hand-eye coordination, whether you're hot or whether you're cold, like as far as like being accurate, that might have to do with how well your heart is engaged, like how much. But that too might also have to do with how your back is engaged, how hard you're working. But that too, how your throat, because you have to communicate and be communicated to work well. So all things are going on all the time, but that too, there's a feedback between your throat, your ears, and your mind, at least probably to your heart, probably to your hands. One thing about appreciating environments and the details of environment, and also human body language, you don't you don't have to be a body language expert to appreciate that wherever your feet exist at any time. Like someone on here on this, I wanted to address this. Someone asked me a question: are you undercover? Somebody asked me, are you undercover? This is a good question. Are you undercover? Is anyone undercover? The way that you would know if I'm undercover or anyone is undercover, if someone is undercover or not, the way you would know that, and you wouldn't be able to lie about that or be fooled about that, is where are someone's feet? Your feet at any time, day or night, anytime, any season, anyhow, that to your ancestors' feet, and where they had amounted to, that would amount to your position of being born, that's still a function of where your feet are at any time. You cannot falsify where your feet are. And if I were here, where I'm existing right now, I'm not gonna divulge where the hell I'm making this video from. Everyone is savvy, this and that. People probably already figured out. People could figure out anything they want if they put their mind to it. But I'm not gonna just simply divulge what the hell I got going on, for as it wouldn't serve myself. But I'll say this much: if someone have misgiving about if I'm, because I actually met a real person. I met an interesting person on the train the other day, and I struck up a conversation because I liked his jacket, and he was telling me some real game. He's not from around here. He's like, but as far as I know, you could be a damn undercover. He wasn't lying about that. But where to were my feet when he met me? At that time, I was training for bartending school. I was trying to become a bartending school, but I had sometimes, like when you're a person of color like me, really cool shit. Like if you go to get a motorcycle license, or you go to get a bartending license, that cool shit like that puts you around cool people, but also sometimes the shit that come with that, like money and lifestyle and invitations and fun shit you wouldn't otherwise get to do, cool people you wouldn't get to know, people ain't about to hand you that. They ain't about to throw you a lava. I'll say, I'm not judging nobody, but then people, they weren't know who threw the best lobs in the NBA. Damn, who did throw the best lobs in the NBA? Gary Payton. Does anybody, so there, if you have, so you have misgiving, am I undercover or not? I'll say this much: I said out my mouth that I grew up around basketball in the 90s. And if you ask me who threw the best damn lobs in the 90s, I'll say Gary Payton. Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. It don't there might have been some that did it as well as that, but it didn't actually get better than Gary Payton and Sean Kemp was a dunk artist. So you have like you have knockout artists like Mike Tyson was a knockout artist. Mike Tyson was a great fighter, not the best fighter, not the worst fighter, but a damn well great fighter. But if you had to succinctly describe uh, Mike Tyson, he was a knockout artist. Yes, he's gonna win a lot of times, make a lot of money, win a lot of championships, be influential, pound for pound, arguably GOAT talk, this and that. But one thing you can't talk down about Mike Tyson is that he had been a knockout artist. But Sean Kemp was a dunk artist, similar to Vince Carter. Vince Carter, he wasn't the winningest. He wasn't not winning, but he wasn't the winningest. But he was damn well a dunk artist, and you could some of the shit he did was damn near cooler than a game. If you, I was talking about 2000, this and that. The very same year that I got that cologne, I was sometimes the way you know people are congruent or not is that things check out, especially as the numbers go. So I was saying that I got this cologne on me, this bad boy cologne that had been, I got that in the fall of 2000 before I began high school. It had been realm with the pheromones that I got put up on game by my friend with the fragrance and also some upperclassmen. But that was in the fall. But then at that spring of that same year, 2000, the year that Y2K was supposed to be upon us, but that we got past, at least it seemed, that you had Vince Carter won the slam dunk contest that fall of two. That was actually that was the year I realized I wasn't going to the NBA because I always wanted to do basketball when I was little, but Vince Carter won that slam dunk contest in the fall of 2000, and then I went back out to Albuquerque in the summer of 2000, and I saw some of these dudes that I played football with when I was a little kid. I would see them at these community centers. When I was with Albuquerque, my dad got a job teaching the summer term back at Albuquerque in the African American department, where he went to the north, but he got a job over the summer in Albuquerque. But they had some politics around. He had a friend that was high ranking at that school, and he had a great long 10-year career there until recently. His friend in the African American Studies department, but his he had got my dad a look that summer 2000. But when I went back out there, like some of my friends I played football with, they were more athletic than me in football. Like sometimes like somebody would get I was good at sacking people because I was always a little bit crafty about getting past people blind spot. But they were way the hell faster, and like some of these kids they'll take off like they'll almost get like a breakaway. Like I don't know what you call a breakaway in football, but my friend he'll track them. He was a hunter on the football field. He'll track their ass down like that, and I'll be running out of steam. They can pass me. He'll smoke both of us to get that fool down like that. It'd be man down, man down, man down, player one down. Having my friend, they should call him the Predator. He was a real predator like that. I'll just call him C, his because that way his name started with. But he was a real damn problem and a predator on the football field like that. But then when I got back out there in at the end of middle school before high school, I saw him dunk. It was a hoop like it probably wasn't 10 foot, but it was probably like damn well like 9 foot hoop at least. He dunked on that thing so cold. After I saw Vince Carter, I was like, fuck man, I ain't about to be NBA material like that. Once I saw that shit, cause I wasn't that I was cold. I was about as much skill as you can get at basketball, like with handling the ball, understanding timing and angles and like dropping. I didn't get to let him hang the way that he'll drop his stuff like that. But I would at least let my stuff hang as the 3 pointers go. I'll break it off and somebody I'll get one off on somebody as the 3 pointers go. I would do that in a game like that. But at a certain point it was like child's play because my safe zone my parents, I'll just say my family wasn't, they weren't the coolest people to be around at all. It was like the gym was my safe place. But at a certain point when I was, especially like at the end of high school, like knocking down threes was like child's play at a certain point. But I still knew I wasn't about to like, at that point, I didn't think I was about to be dunking on people like that. So it didn't mean the same after I saw him do that. But Vince Carter had been a dunk artist like that. But Sean Kemp was a dunk artist too, and it had been Gary Payton to throw the lob like that. But if you're up in these venues as a person that appear like me, and you're trying to do for the motorcycle or like bartending, I'm up in these bartending schools like that, and because I practice finger independence like with the guitar, a lot of people don't know that when you put kids up to instruments, when kids excel at school, some of the kids that excel at school, but not only school too, like jobs. Like I had this job as a pizza, and they'd be like, man, that like some people they're like they're simply smart. It's not genius in itself. It's just that they don't make a lot of mistakes, and they understand what they're doing in their environment at any time, and they're very effective like that. Part of that is from the actual pathways in your brain. So like if you're doing stuff like say you play a lot of video games, or I'm not to take shots at video games, but so much as video games are programmed by attention engineers and geared to make you passive, because the video game is to bait you. It draws your engagement through the challenge, but it also makes you passive by how much information is presenting to you. That cannot, some things are better or worse for your neural pathways. And I think that one of the drawbacks and the detriments of video games is that they're designed to be addictive, but also that too, they're catering and they're inundating a person with attention. So it could affect the way you discriminate attention for better or worse, but it might not always be effective. But it might be similar with movies too. And I found that I think that some things make you more true to life and more aware of your environment and effective in your environment, and some do not. And I think that the ones that do not, like movies, I think that movies are not the best thing for people sometimes, because like imagine like a lot of the people you know, right? Like you know a lot of adults, right? Like if you told a lot of adults that, hey man, I think they were shooting a gun outside. Can you believe that they're shooting a gun? Now that adult that you just told they were shooting a gun, they some of them never actually heard a gun busted, not the least of which busted at their ass. But you tell them that you just heard a gun outside. They're like, oh, a gun. Oh yeah, that's probably a this and that. I don't that they don't bat an eye at a gun and shit, right? Some one is that they don't know that how real the actual gun is. They don't know that guns are real. Some people, as much as they're adults and they have jobs, they don't actually know that guns are actually real, and that people would point them at another person. But a lot of people that are adults, like they don't bat an eye at a lot of crazy shit, is because they think that they know about shit and they've experienced shit secondhand so much that they're jaded by it. Yeah, that's just a gunshot. That don't mean nothing. That's what a person actually would think like, but it's just because they watch too much movies and shit. And you could say that you're actually delusional if you think that the presence of a firearm in your general vicinity at large, contraband at large, deadly contraband present in your vicinity is not a big deal. You're simply delusional. If that firearm was known to have been prepared for someone, intended for someone, pointed at someone, fired at, around, about someone, if you think that that's anything less than fucking serious, no, excuse my language, because I sound like I watch too much TV when I cuss like that. But if you think that's anything less much television, that real life doesn't phase you in the least, I bet if you were in a job where you actually had to be aware of your environment and aware of the success of other people, you would likely be failing, because I think that some of that, the very delusion of having an experience rendered, that's not true to life, that's not true to the game, as in like movies or television, that's completely out of your experience. Like some things you can't actually appreciate or understand without a reference. Like but some things are completely out of your reference. Like some of the things you watch in film are no part of your experience. Like even if you watch adult entertainment, da 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 da, that you cut on this flick after this time, that's still not different than your experience, because most people have some experience. All of life is actual sexual energy, activity. But even if you were to cut on a flick like that, you have some experience that corresponds to that. So that's not completely out of your experience. But when you watch a lot of movies, that's completely out of your experience. Like you think you know about certain hard drugs that you haven't done before. You think you have a clue about this hard drug that you haven't ingested before. You're bogus like that, but you're also delusional like that, but also likely ineffective like that. But these instruments, like say a guitar, a flute, if you actually have children picking up instruments regularly and training their mind to that, that's doing things to the pathways of your mind that are brilliant and profound, and they also make you very effective in simple things. So I'll be up in these like training venues for like bartending and stuff like that, and I'm making short work mincemeat out of the training material. One, because I read a lot, but also some of the very preceptors that claim they've been doing that for this many decades, 4.5 decades. But when I ask a simple question that's blatant to a person that's cognizant, you hadn't thought about that one before, as you have 4 decades of experience. But they'll also blast a person out of there because they ain't trying to give you them look like that cool stuff like that. as a certain person. But my bad. But what I meant to say is that you're uh I a little bit divulged with that. I was talking about yeah, I'll divulge with that, but diverge I so what I meant to say is that you can uh your body so I was talking about the fair so I was talking about a couple of things. So a person has asked, are you undercover? Are you this undercover person right now? What I'll say is that when the first someone asked me that, that's the second time I got asked that within a week and a half. But it's understandable too, because like, damn man, what's it? So so when someone's saying is that are you undercover, is that you're at once saying you're savvy, you may seem savvy, but too much of savvy or too convenient of savvy, that it would be misgivings. But all I'll say, the only thing that I'll say, the only one that anyone can say, if someone asks about your true, there's a couple ways you know a people's, there's two ways to know someone's allegiance or their real background that I know of. One is something called, so when you say a password, one of the older videos on this channel, if you look back in this channel, the one at the beginning, I have a video about a shibboleth. The real word for a password is actually called a shibboleth, because in biblical times, a shibboleth would be a word, and familiarity with that word, or lack of familiarity with that word, or ability to pronounce that word, or have that word pronounced to you and recognize it, it really betrays your real background and allegiance. So like sometimes I've met people like the I met people from the north, that like I've met people from the black community from the north, right? But them and their family lived for at least a few recent generations in the north. But then like the where I'm from, the Twin Cities, Minnesota, it's kind of like a hub for it's a hub for a lot of a lot of the north itself, the Midwest itself. It's like a hub, and like like if a lot of the Midwest, it feeds itself. So like Memphis will feed St. Louis, will feed Chicago, will feed Gary, will feed Detroit, will feed Minneapolis, like that, and Milwaukee, and like this region, the Midwest, and probably Cleveland and stuff like that. At least the whole country too, but at least that's almost like a metropolis and a mecca in itself. If you just appreciate how brilliant, but also well fed in talent, in history, in pedigree, as the black community goes, the Midwest is like that. But also too, parts of the Midwest, especially where I'm at, the Twin Cities, had been once a terminal point for the Underground Railroad. That has to do with how these places, communities exist presently, and how they've been founded and have been viable as a landing zone for other people in the black community from those areas, and broader, recently and of old, such that in the Twin Cities, Minnesota, you have Rondo of renown and revere in St. Paul, that was gentrified by the dissection of Highway 94, and then what remained of it on the north and south. The north of it would be Frogtown, the south of it would be Selby, and then so it went from Rondo to being Frogtown and Selby. But I think Frogtown and Selby, they had been polarized at different times. Like young when I was young, I'd go to church, and my church had been from Minneapolis, and then it was in the very west of St. Paul. But it would have children that I went to school with and didn't go to school with, that would be from either from like the north of 94 or the south of 94, but they didn't always get along. So, but that had actually been the same neighborhood, Rondo, back in the day. Frogtown and Selby had been Rondo back in the day, but then it was gentrified by 94 going through. Then also, I think Selby was further gentrified by, you have a lot of yuppie activity on Selby to present. I don't know if you have as much in Frogtown. I don't think you have as much, quite as much, or the same way of outright yuppie gentrification north of 94. I'm just talking about very few amount of blocks north of 94, but you do have a lot more of it south of 94 on Selby. But then Minneapolis, you have North Minneapolis. South Minneapolis has African American presence, but also a lot of African presence. But then also North Minneapolis, that's a historical black neighborhood that corresponds and probably has a similar history with Rondo. But them too, the area too, as a former terminal point of the Underground Railroad, according to Judge Joe Brown. But when you're in these northern cities, like if you're in Minneapolis and even sometimes Milwaukee, like say you go to Milwaukee, you may think you're in Chicago, you may think you're in the South, you may think you're in the Mid South because you're meeting people recently from there. But in Minneapolis, it's more so of a northern city. You know you're in the north in Minneapolis, but you can also meet people, from, especially if you're in the black community, from deeper reaches of the South or more recently in long-standing part of the North. But like I met a lady at my base, and she was saying that she was exaggerating. We're coming back from work on a Friday, and she was with her babies, and she's like I was like, how y'all doing on Happy Friday, how y'all doing? And she was like oh, we tired, baby. And then she was like we too poor for the consonants, we tired, baby. And that does sound like that sounds like the South, that sounds like the black community to say we tired, baby, as she would know that. But when I went to the black church, I met people in the black church in Western St. Paul, the very edge of Western St. Paul, and I think they moved back to Minneapolis now, that church. But they had been more recently from the South, like from the deeper parts of the South, but also familiar with the North, but more recently from the deeper parts of the South. Sometimes I meet people from also from like Louisiana, very recently from Louisiana, that I was blessed with them too. Like one of the church mothers was from Louisiana, and she had a daughter who's my same age, and she was my coworker, and she was hilarious and brilliant. And then she had a son that he was just this really cold dude. He was already cold since before we were grown, but he was a cool dude like that. But she would be from Louisiana, so you'd have people from the South, which is one way of talking. You have people from Louisiana, which is also the South, but is another way of talking that has different influence, like French and Creole, and its own thing, Louisiana. Then you have people from the North, like from Detroit or more longstanding Minneapolis, which is still the black community, but it's still different. All those can be the same and converge, but also different. But this lady that was saying like, "Hey, baby, it's Friday, man. We tired. We had a long day, and we tired. We can't afford the consonants. Can you got a little consonant? Can you spare a little consonant? We tired." She was joking like that. But then I upped the ante and I said I had been tired, because I met a lady she was from the black community from the deep South. At one time back in the day, I was joking that same way, because that back then they used to be like right there, like back in like in the time of like the early 2000s, like some of the like the club music, they'd be like right there. They would say like right there, like you could tell from the way, you could tell by the way I walk. I ain't from around here. Probably couldn't tell because I ain't walking nowhere. That was like some St. Louis type vibe like that. And I'll be joking like that with this lady. I said something about like I'm tired. I was trying to sound like I had just got back from the Mid South, but I was trying to sound like I'm from the South. I said I'm tired. She said we tired. So that's yet another, but that pronouncing tired like that. I don't know if people commonly say that like that, but that would be an example of a shibboleth, is that you can't have had that pronounced for you or be aware. You can't pronounce that or have that pronounced from you unless you have enough of a background and contact with a people in a culture to come across that. That's a shibboleth. But that's not unique to that. That's a order. And another one like that would be like, I had some friends that were some real sturdy friends that were like white American that I worked with as like as a clerk. And this person, his person, he really actually, sometimes people really love you. Like a lot of people, like I noticed that like a lot of guys that are white guys, like in America, like they're not gonna fake like they're not gonna really engage you like a friend at like just off of the bat like that. But once they call you your friend, they really love you. Like sometimes, so I had a friend like that who really loved me. He was a little bit older, and he like I could tell he loved me when we left. He's like, man, damn man, I would fucking man, I would like I'd be willing to like He's like, man, I fucking have your I can't, I don't want to say it like him. I'm not looking for smoke, and he wasn't looking for smoke. But he was saying like, man, I'll really have your back, man, because you're a nice guy, man. I really like you, man. I would really have your back, man. I don't like a lot of people are bogus, man. I would really have your back, man. And I could tell he meant it when he said that. But and then like after he said that, he gave me a ride home, and we're listening to that song. Dun-dun-dun. What's that song go? It's like hold on, ready or not, or we're all that we got. Hold for one more. Oh, living on a prayer. Oh, living on a prayer. Take my hand and we'll make it, I swear. living on, and that was like us because we were working at this antiquated. You call that anachronistic? Like we're in an antiquated, out of date mom and pop store in the early 2000s, but it's reminiscent of the 60s and 70s, and it had a real history. It's a real old school store, and it had old school products and old school money coming through there. People liked it, but our ass were living on a prayer, and we were also getting gentrified, bought out by the bigger bad guy, the bigger RX store came in and made an X out of us. They were more so R, and we were more so X. And but so we were actually really living on a prayer like that. But it was good to go back then, man. I wasn't messed up about it. I was content in life, but I didn't know how bad, because that was actually at the time of the actual first recession, 2008. You could say that the actual pandemic was a reverberation and an adjustment for that actual failure that was actually imminent and present, and it wasn't dispensed with, because you had that failure of 2008 recession. Then they bailed the bank out, and they printed a lot. They further falsified the fiat currency, and it was a problem then that they did that. Then part of the rollout, it's ostensibly, according to Tashri Bey, of the pandemic, it was part of the actual financial ramifications of that. And I think that now some of the fraud that's coming to light, man, there ain't no new such thing called fraud that wasn't known about. There ain't no fraud in Minnesota that wasn't known about. There ain't no politician, this and that wasn't, we just discovered this politician who had got away with this and that for this many years, and this politician is also pictured with this one, and we just figured that out right now. I call cap, man. No, they're convenient. They're taking the fall right now. This shit had went bad. You can't fudge that one long enough, or it actually makes money to prosecute it. So now we're holding them to account, but we also have put them up to it likely. Sometimes back in the day when the king would persecute their right-hand man that they discovered for stealing, no, they put their right-hand man up to that. Check in with the 48 laws of power if you want to see that dynamic. You ain't just discovered nothing called fraud. Like, hell no. You made the fraud. You guaranteed the fraud. You probably validated the fraud, but you had been watching the fraud that whole damn time. Oh, we have convincing, irrefutable evidence. No, you had irrefutable evidence because you put them up to that shit and you watched them do that shit and you had a piece of that shit, and now they're the soonest one to take the fall like that as you're rolling that out. But you could say that actually the very corruption, probably some of the prosecution of immigration now, different ways the society is not financially viable. So you start with the weakest member to prosecute them to yet make more money and to yet fudge a little bit further. So that's, I think, what the corruption stuff is about. That's what the pandemic had been about. And that's what the bailouts had been about. But our ass were in a lot of danger even back then in 2008 when we didn't know how bad actually things were getting and had already been passed. But me and my friend were listening to that song, Living on a Prayer. And I think he really was one person to love me and actually had my back if it had came to that. So you have to count your blessings. And he had been one person like that. I a little bit got on a tangent with that. Um, um, so you can but you can perceive things by listening to your body, and but wherever your feet are, your feet really betray. So, but a shibboleth, but he was from the north, and he would say he had this thick northern accent. And so, like, if you say like yag bombs, like a lot of people watching this, you might know about the word yag bomb, right? But you really can't actually say yag bomb right unless you're from the north. Like that's one thing that would give you away as someone with a north, like some of my accent. Another reason that a person might ask, "Are you undercover?" is because my background. I'm from a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-regional background because my very earliest experience in life were like northern Minnesota. My family's from northern Minnesota. They migrated to northern Minnesota, and they had a thick northern Minnesota accent. You can hear it in my voice if you were listening to me slower. You could hear the northern Minnesota. I'm reading this book about singing right now, and it says that a lot of your proclivities of speech, they're so innate because you learn them so young. So the way that you learn to talk when you're young is very difficult to get past that to any different way of talking than you did when you were very young. But also especially in your native language. So that's called your mother tongue. So your native language, if that's English for you, according to Richard Alderson in his book about voice training by Richard Alderson, a brilliant book about singing. I don't know if there's actually a better book about singing that exists than that book. Training it's either Training the Voice or Voice Training by Richard Alderson. He says that your habits, your proclivities in a language, your first language, your mother tongue, it's very difficult to get past your way of speaking in your mother tongue, or your faults or your strong suits in singing in your mother tongue. But if you learn to sing in another language, a new language to you, you can learn to sing better and sometimes sing that language better. Although that language can't be the sung, one language cannot be sung the same as another language, and people that sing in one language cannot sing the same as those who come up singing in another language. But so too for speaking. But you can sooner learn to speak well or sing well another language that's not your original language, according to Richard Alderson, than your own, because you're learning that one more superficially and more recently, so your habits aren't as ingrained and also as fluent. But your original language is deeply ingrained because you've been practicing since you're a kid, and you've been doing it since you're a kid. But I grew up as a young kid, very young, around very thick northern accents, more so like white American. But I also grew up around a fair amount of African accent because my dad had an African accent, and these his friends in these parties, they'd be recent immigrants from Africa. So I grew up a lot around a lot of African people with thick African accents, but also white Americans like from my mother's family and in my vicinity. Then I went to the Southwest as a boy before elementary, but beginning elementary. And the Southwest has a very beautiful way of speaking, and you can hear a lot of that in my voice at a slower cadence. The Southwest. I had someone on this channel that blessed me by commending that I sounded native, but that's more so the native influence of the Southwest that I grew up around. Then I came back to the North. When I was in the North, I had a lot of influence of the Black community, like in the Twin Cities, a lot of the Black community, but also that too Southern, because the Southern language is part of the Black community and culture in the public schools. I came up in the public schools in the Twin Cities, and then I went to part of high school in Tennessee, and then I got back to the West. I was in the West Coast at different times as a child and as an adult. That's and have formative experiences there. So that's a lot of my background and proclivity. While it'd be difficult to place my speech, that too, a lot of my friends that I grew up with were like first generation American Africans, but also preppy. So I grew up around some preppy people, like some prep. Some people I knew were described once as preppy playboys by actual females. After years after the fact, they're like, "Damn, them fools you used to hang with had been some preppy playboys." They didn't give me that look, but they're like, "Damn, them has been some preppy playboys you were down, you were friends with." But the only time I ever met anyone that could place me, the only like some people know exactly what the hell you're about and where you're from. It had been a person, it had been a Hispanic brother. I had a reason to be doing business, above board business, like I had a professional reason to be dealing with someone. And he was like, yeah, man, your ass got to be from that suburb right there, man. He wasn't even from the Twin Cities. He's from a different part of Minnesota, but he knew exactly what in the hell suburb I had been wasting time lollygagging as a kid and shit. The way I'll try to call myself, present myself, communicating to him that many years after the fact. He's like, yeah, man, your ass from that suburb right there, man. So somebody can always peg you for exactly what the hell and who the hell you are by your speech, but also by your feet, because your mannerisms in speech, what you betray of speech, it show your real background, but also some of your values too, and like what kind of places you, what kind of experiences you would have based on the way you identify. It comes out in your speech like that. But another thing is that wherever your feet exist at any time for any reason, whether you're undercover, whether you were undercover, had been undercover, and to some extent, not as much, you can't as much, they call that prognosticate. I think that a lot of times when people get into fight, like you can say you fall out with your family and stuff like that, sometimes there had been a prognostication that prompted that. So like say sometimes people are excommunicated from a church, right? If you can imagine being excommunicated from a church now or in the past when it would have been really heavy, what actually got you, how did you have contention and smoke at a church? How did you really get into contention at a church? Church is for going to church. It's for being humble and praying and understanding people and helping alms with the poor. How do you actually draw contention at a church? Or how is contention projected onto you if it had been worthy or not? Likely there had been prognostication. Somebody called themselves or put on the pretension or air or was appreciated as calling themselves a prophet. If you got into contention at a church, that's what that had been about. You're speaking for the greatest, heaven forbid. blasphemy, but also you're anticipating future events, which is like speaking for the present. So sometimes, like when people get into a knockdown, drag them out fight in your family, something what gave the wiggle room or the onset of that would been you might have been watching the news about the weather. Hey, it's gonna snow in the next 5 days. I want you to buckle up. Oh, did you know it's gonna snow? Oh yeah, man. I don't really like how I don't really prepare for the snow, man. You know, if it come, it come. Oh, that's the way you think about that, and then it get bogus like that. But what had been more so bogus is actually it's not good to forebode the future, even as the weather goes. That's actual the standpoint, and that's a real footing for conflict is to predict anything, to prognosticate anything, because you're speaking for what had not occurred. That is, you're actually being biased towards the future. You're and also other people's future, because the future is all people's future. When you speak toward the future or insinuate the future, you can don't speak too real soon for the world's wheels still and spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming. That's some real stuff, and that can be a difficulty to prognosticate. So where you may be in the future, it's not. I don't think it's appropriate to prognosticate your own future or somebody else's. However, wherever you may get to be, it's not independent of where your feet are now, and it's a function of where your feet are. So the realest way you can tell if someone is or had not been anything is that how do they communicate? How does their communicate go with their story? How do the numbers in their story line up? That is like the even as though I kind of real I kind of I vent I foam at the mouth about numbers, about giving a person a mind or like or being arbitrary about like time and measurement and stuff like that. But as person's story checks out or doesn't check out, especially as timelines go and as quantities go and stuff like that, you can't falsify you can only lie so long. You can only lie so long. But someone asked me like, man, are you undercover? I'll say on my channel here, I'm now over 730 videos on this channel, and a lot of them are long form. I'm running my mouth like that. That'd be very difficult to talk about anything. That meant 700 videos of anything while lying. That's very difficult because one lie gives birth to another, and you have to forget about that and calibrate that. So I can say that I think that damn near anything I've said on this channel has been true to the life, true to the game, such as that it's not very difficult for me to enunciate and sometimes reference things I've said because I haven't been telling a tall one, and I'm doing very little of exaggerating. I normally I it's a proclivity. A lot of speech, like there's a book I read that said that speech, some parts of speech, you can't actually talk without there being implications of light and dark and potentially sin. Anything you call sin, like there's different appreciation of sin in different cultures, but it's appreciated that it all leads to death, real actual outcomes of death, untimely death, unfortunate misfortune, but also death, suffering too, but essentially death is what comes from sin. But it's like some things of like some people like they're you're a churchgoer, right? In the West, right? You go someone I didn't see the comment. There's a comment here about Jesus. Here go one about Jesus, right? Okay. Forever who is open-minded. Jesus Christ, the Christian church, speaks against sin. But if you go to church, they talk about people who are not present, right? Even sometimes I don't know if Catholic ministers do it, but I know Protestant ministers all the way up to who are appreciated, entitled apostles and bishop sometimes. Not to call anyone, but I've heard people that are called apostles and called bishops, but that two ministers in the Protestant church, the Christian church in Jesus Christ, talk about people who are not present to speak for themselves, or talk about congregation members who may not speak for themselves. According to Islam, that's a sin. If you speak about somebody who's not present, that's actually sinning right there that I'm doing, heaven forbid, is that if you speak about someone, you call forth someone by name or maybe even by title or by semblance who is not present to account for themselves, to reply for themselves, to parry, there's different words for a respond, like to parry, to I think it might be retort, or for somebody for someone to offer a response to defend themselves, advocate for themselves. If you're talking about any person, even if you're having a holy sermon, okay, you talk about the devil, right? Anyone watching this, you talk about Jesus, you talk about Jesus Christ, but also the holy books that Jesus Christ himself talked about the devil. Is the devil a person or not? So when is Jesus Christ a person or not? Is the Holy Spirit a person or not? Is God a person or not? Are those the same person or not? Is the devil a person or not? Are those the same person or not? Is a spirit also a person? Can a person be a spirit? Can a spirit be a person? If any of those, even the devil, so you're concerned about the devil, right? You're laying hands about the devil. You're worried about the devil. You so much as you have to reference the devil, you're worried about the devil. Is the devil then a person? But if the devil is a person, a real person, a full-fledged person, you are yet also sinning to speak about that person that is not present. That's a sin in Islam. It is to a sin to speak about any person while they're not there. Whether you talk about your landlord, whether you talk about a politician, whether you talk about a city, whether you talk about a person no longer with us or with us. If you talk about any person who's not there, you're sinning. You would call that gossip. One of the things that's dark about gossiping, backbiting, slander, maligning, defamation, all that together. The main part of that, the worst part of that, is that that person is not able to offer a reply that would speak to the truth, but they're also having their livelihood and their life impacted, their reputation impacted. So if the devil is a person, all people have to, no person is beyond accountability, not even the devil. Thereby, all people have a reputation, even the devil. If you're honest, otherwise if you see, for according to Arthur Avalon, the only way that a king maintains justice is that the king is one and the same for all. But also, what's almost greater than the king and part of the king and what the king ruled by is principle. The king himself is not greater than principle. You might say principality. That's going a little bit, I'm a little bit getting vague with that because I can't enunciate clearly principality. But ostensibly, the king is over the principalities and factors into principalities that have to do with like regions and authority and auspices and ordainment is principality. But the principality itself is a state it's where different lines of authority converge on principality, but also interests converge, which are the same thing. Authority is not independent of interest. It is not independent of territory, and it would have to do with rulership, kingdom, but also principle is fundamental in all that and is even greater than any person. The greatest is not a respecter of person, but also the respecter of person should not be a respecter of person, such as to defer to principle. If the king gives his word, the king cannot go back on his own word and may be held to penalty against his own word, because word is bond is greater than the king, is the principle of the thing. For the word was with the greatest, and the greatest was with the word, for the word was the greatest. But what is also the word is similar and synonymous, nearly interchangeable with the principle. So none is actually greater than the principle. So you're acting like you're calling out the devil, you're defaming the devil, but also you're blaspheming the devil, or you're actually you're sinning against the devil by speaking about one that's not present. So is the devil present or not? Is the devil real or not? Is the devil a person or not? If they are, then how may you afford to sin against anyone and be righteous in anything, even against the devil, if you are sinning yet against the devil by referencing the devil who's not present? You are yet falsifiable. Thereby, how much of the rest of your story is not also falsifiable? And as your story impacts real outcomes, real opportunities to live and die and enjoy and suffer upon the earth, with your reality and or pretension and or auspices and or righteousness and or self-righteousness and or ordainment and or congruence. How is that substantial? If you may interpose, interject, and dispense with any principle, such as to sin, such as to talk about someone not present for the sake of a sermon or a story or an allegory or humor or of a foreboding or warning or prayer. How may you even reference the devil in prayer without sinning? that too. Some people would say the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are the Trinity. Now, I was accosted by a pair of of uh, um, of of what's the word, missionaries in a mall, then in the city, on a bus stop, a couple, they blessed me with food the first time they met me. But I had a unique appearance because at that time I was wearing shorts, but it was getting cold, but it wasn't cold enough to sear you or cause injury. So I thought it was healthy, and it was otherwise it wasn't actually inconceivable to use cold to consciously choose shorts. So I would stick out to them. Then they accosted me again when it was very cold yet again, and they said, "Oh, it's good you're not wearing shorts, but we just wanted to let you know about this service, this and that." Now I follow the works of Arthur Avalon, and Arthur Avalon says that if you ascribe to some of the teachings of Bharata Dharma, you wouldn't mince with or set foot in a temple though you be chased by an elephant. I subscribe to that, and I have not been inside of a church since I read that statement over a decade ago, except for when I was invited to a church by a very beautiful lady, a person I loved. There was a girl next door effect. There's a beautiful woman that was a neighbor of mine for a long time, and I really actually loved her. I don't know why. I just actually loved her. Um, I loved who she was. She didn't really much. She doesn't show a lot of interest. She was a little bit interested in me at different times, and she was considering. She told me once that she had been considering dating me, and we had been like corresponding. That's actually before I got my act together. I think I'm a more savvy person than I was when I was knowing her, but she still saw something she saw something in me that she spent time with me, and she invited me to a church. And that time that I went to that church, I had some real heavy stuff going on in my life, and that was a blessing to me, and a crossroads, and a ability to calibrate myself. And I survived that season. It might have been part of me going there. So the exception proves the rule, and nothing's all the way good or bad. Not even church, not even any faith. But outside of that, I haven't been in a church. But elephants have a long memory, so it's like you don't have to go to even a church if somebody would remember a commitment that you made, according to some of the statements, the Psalm statements, adage of Bharata, as in Bharata Dharma, as in step light around a temple, though you be chased by an elephant, according to Arthur Avalon. But to that point, when they accosted me like that twice, and they invited me to a service that night, and I was thinking about going there, but I didn't want to. When I had been accosted by the missionaries about a month before that, I flaked on them because I had misgivings about present. One is that I didn't know them from anything, so I had misgivings about like getting in a car the next day with anyone, because it was like a Saturday they met me. I had misgivings about getting a car with anyone I haven't vetted, but that too, to present myself at ostensibly a place of worship, to to be enticed and advertised to confess allegiance and faith to a higher power, which I had actually already been what you call saved prior to that. But it's interesting that sometimes, like if you're a person of color like myself, I had actually been saved in the black church with real living saints, real actual living saints with backgrounds and stories and redemption that are not falsifiable. So I had been actually trained among saints in the black church, a strong contingent remnant of the black community and black church in the North. I had been trained by them. I never went away from the teaching. I went away from the church, but I never went away from the teachings, the principles, or the lifestyle largely of being around saints, as much as is actually reasonable for a person walking with a higher power. I never went away from any of that or stopped attempting to improve myself or loving other people. But you can be a person of color like me. You can be saved to. You can be what they say, a walking seasoned, walking according to the Spirit for multiple decades. But you're actually not very convincing as a person of color generally. You've been walking according to the speaking accord of thinking according in your heart of hearts, according to the Spirit, by and large, as is reasonable for a human being. But in this many decades, it's not convincing, and people are still concerned about your faith and whether you would confess, you would be saved, even though you never were not that for the last 2 decades. Whatever you would learn by that, and be would ever be perceptible in you by that for 2 decades of that, it doesn't mean nothing to no one if you're a person of color. I'd imagine that the opposite is true, is that if you have the right appearance and stature and demeanor and bearing and convincingness, you can ostensibly pick up the scriptures or church venues or training as a minister for a couple weeks, if that, or a month, if that. You probably walk into service, if that, and give over your life, if that. And now you have people ready to prostrate in front of you, if ready to go, good to go like that, after 30 minutes of being familiar with that faith. But then after 2 or 3 decades of living that, hearing that, being that, wanting that, seeking that, doing that, surrendering that, sharing that, you're not convincing like that. So a lot of stuff is just simply cap. But if when I met them, they invited me, and I was thinking about going, and then I bumped into them again on the train, and I saw they were with their leader. So they had here. Sometimes you don't know what's behind people and things. You really don't. So if someone comes up to you as a missionary, and they have something to offer you, but you don't know who they run with, and who put them up to that, who supports them, who they answer to, who they genuflect to, who they defer to, you don't know who they're on with. But likely most people don't act of their own volition, especially if it's like something that sanctioned. So I saw their actual, like, the higher person that they were checking in with was on the train with them. They didn't expect to bump into me again. Not to did they nor their person that was managing them expect to, their handler. There was a missionaries, and then they had a handler in the region. And I had bumped into a bookstore because it's cold as hell and I needed to warm up. And then I got back on the train, and I was on my way to bartending school then, and then also when I met Street Person later. But the person on the train was like, hey, so do you know who Jesus Christ? Have you given your Lord to Jesus Christ? I was like, yeah, I've been saved before. They're like, do you know who the Holy Spirit is? And I didn't know if they meant that literally or spiritually. If you literally ask me, do you know who the Holy Spirit is? Literally, that would refer to the angel of Gabriel according to the Quran. Do you know the Holy Spirit literally? To answer your question literally, that refers to the angel of Gabriel literally, according to the Quran literally, which is the Abrahamic faith that's synonymous, interposable, and exchangeable, I think, to different degrees with the Old Testament and parts of Judaism. Those are Abrahamic, and they pay homage to Abraham, and they reference, I think, the promise between God and Abraham and his descendants. That is, I think Jacob became, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jacob is the son of Abraham, and God made a promise to Jacob that is synonymous with an injury he sustained to his heel, at which point he became Israel. And God, the faith of Judaism, the faith is the faith of Israel, is the family of Israel, and the promise to prosper Israel and his descendants. And I think that the Quran is not different than that and pays homage to Abraham. It's the Abrahamic faith. In the Quran, it states that I read a book that's from a scholar that compiled deeper insights about the Quran and references than you can get superficially passing through it without deep scholarship. And the Holy Spirit, the name for the Holy Spirit is Gabriel, the angel of Gabriel. So this woman asked, do you know the Holy? Now, yes, I've prayed and felt the presence of what felt to me like the Holy Spirit, if that would be called Gabriel or not. And it felt like as cognizant as a person, and yet finer and broader. So I'm familiar with spontaneity and improvisation and grace and mercy and blessing and traveling mercies and living mercies daily, that would amount to ordering my footsteps daily by being supplicated daily, such as that I was on that very train to meet them. So the first time they met me, when they met me that second time, actually, the first time probably too, but the second time that morning they met me, these missionaries. The reason they met me is because I got off a train preemptively en route to where I was going to practice music, en route, because a woman walked on the bus and she tapped the floor in such a way that it inspired me that maybe there'd be a reason to get off right now. That was a little bit too timely, that's a little bit too serendipitous, timely, but also convenient and significant, that there might be actual value to get off the train right here, right now, as I don't otherwise have a reason to, and I got somewhere more interesting to go. I can go this way to go to my training for bartending, or I can go further to do my practicing music, which I was doing concurrently. I decided to get off. That would be reminiscent of walking, having your footsteps ordered for you, because I didn't otherwise have a more compelling reason to get off. But I was inspired that there might be a reason to get off based on walking in faith. Then I can do that, and I'm approached by very missionaries, and a lot of times when people want to pray for you, they're actually you're making a gesture, a public gesture of surrendering and conceding some of your agency as a man in prerogative to choose or not choose faith. So you're actually showing you actually can't show more respect to a person than to pray according to their liking and their faith and their dogma and their pedigree and their creed as they would prompt you. But according to Arthur Avalon, also, who made that statement, as to not set foot in a temple, uh, though you be chased by an elephant, is also that a real person of faith, a demarcation of a person of faith, is that they're very Catholic. Catholic doesn't mean necessarily Christian, but that they're very broad, open-minded, and agreeable and amenable to different faiths, because there's nothing right or wrong with any faith or lifestyle in itself. It's what is suitable and appropriate for one person and their development and their genuine path based on their genuine interests and strong suits, and who would come upon that path based on both of their choices. That's a suitable path, and one path is as good or bad as the other, but can is equally be good, and therefore is worthy of respect and deference. So when a very person of a Christian background would approach me, notwithstanding the actual atrocities and trauma, very subtle but social and consequential, that I sustained around churches as a young person and beyond, I would still deprecate and show reverence and worship even for their faith, for their Messiah, for their prayer that they would like to say with me, that they'd like me to say out my mouth. There's nothing actually deeper, closer to your will than your statements, and you're yet conceding that to pray with them. But then too, they don't really take you for a believer, even though you've been walking with faith as you understand. But then their handler a few hours later, also my position on that train, I was yet serendipitous and walking with faith to meet them the first time. And the second time I met them, it was also somewhat serendipitous because I was going by inspiration and spontaneity to be on the train for a second time and meet them a second time with their handler, unbeknownst to myself and them and their handler the second time. And they would ask me, have you been saved? Yes, I have been saved. Do you know who the Holy Spirit is? Yes, I have experience of what feels like the Holy Spirit and providence to the present day and moment, but also literally, I think you would be referring to the angel of Gabriel, strictly speaking according to Scripture. She was taken aback with that, and also she went on to a little bit she went on to dispute that a little bit gently, but I think she may have been outside of scholarship or theology to debate if so maybe may help me. I don't know if I don't know if that's a difference between Islam and Christianity, but I know that I'm fairly certain that according to Islamic scholars, which is also Abrahamic faith, the angel of Gabriel, the Holy Spirit refers to the angel of Gabriel. I think it's the same in Christianity, but she wasn't aware of that. An actual handler, but who was a ranking religious clergy of some kind, influential, statured patron of the community, and also associated with Christian leadership, would not be familiar with that, as I would be, as a non-clergy member and also a non-observing Christian. Although I respect who's great in this world and Messiah and forgiveness and God, but I don't present myself as a Christian or frequent Christian venues for some of the redundancies and some of the actual dangers that can attend large constituents of people for any reason. Um, but um, but um, but to that point though, so but still too is okay. So I don't see that. I think that any person is part of who and what's great. So I don't see that there has to be a difference. There's a lot of names for who's great. Like one word for God would be Emmanuel. One word is some people call it a little bit Israel and God can be synonymous because is the promise was between an unknown person, a great person, but somewhat unknown. Sometimes you're greater unknown. And Israel, the very promise between the greatest in this life and the person Jacob, who became Israel with that promise, and his descendants who are also him, and viable through that promise, and that promise maker and keeper, and who is true. All of that can be appreciated as Israel, and I think Israel is another name of God. So is Emmanuel. I think Emmanuel means God with us, and I don't know what Israel literally means. At one point, I did know what Israel means, but I don't mean. God can also be called what are other names for God? Elohim, I think. Um, uh, some of these names of God, they're not appreciated as being appropriate, even in the to be uttered out loud, even by this standpoint they come from. But I'm just speaking according to truth and fact for teaching, and sometimes the exception proves the rule, and there's exceptional purposes such as teaching. So um, uh, Elohim is not normally even the word God. And according most people the world over are either practicing Christians, Jews, or Muslim. That represents a lot of the world. But even people who would not be from that, they're still impacted and the people from those faiths have different degrees of oversight or bearing on the lives of other people. So most people are some mode or not outside of being influenced or impacted, if not managed to different degrees in their life at different ranges of their life by people who are either Christian, um, Muslim, or Jewish, but that too, all of those are Abrahamic and are not viable outside of, according to their own statements, Abraham and the promise between Abraham and his descendant and his first descendant being, I think, Israel, Jacob. So that impacts a lot of the world, but that actual faith in the strictest sense in Judaism, they wouldn't even so much as utter the word God because that's too solemn and sacred to utter. It was the moment you would utter that as a mortal or outside of a consecrated venue and purpose according to time and place in season um, and time of day, that would be blasphemy, profane to say even the word God. So actually, as you're going to a Christian church and you're saying God, as much each time you say God in a Christian church, according to the premise of the Christian faith, which is the old books. So you have the Old Testament of the Christian faith. That is the older books. That is the law, the strict law of Judaism. To be frank and blunt, the Messiah was not greater than or outside the purposes of the promise between God and Israel, such as the words of I think I had these missionaries at the mall explain to me that my favorite scripture was from the Lord Jesus Christ himself speaking to his disciples when he said they were wondering about money changers, usurers, and Pharisees and Sadducees, who are either statured people. A lot of people don't see the similarity between Sadducees and Pharisees and also money changers. They're the same people today because the money changers are people who afford an exact interest. Those are money changers. The Sadducees and Pharisees are the learned people, the statured people, but also the very people who lead people to the money changers. So like you go to the colleges, right? You have a professor, right? Like a lot of people be like, man, what are you doing? You hop up online talking this and that one. Or what are you, a professor now? Are you oh, so you son of a professor? You son of a you might say that derogatory or respectfully, but you got the son of a professor, no kidding, son of a professor out here saying things that they think are true or be valuable. And a lot of people would think that I'm egregious for that, or they ain't got time for me to say this and that stuff. But I actually looked into some of these things and learned some of these things in real life, hard-won experience, hard knocks, but also sometimes educational venues. But then you got a low key, a lo and behold, real dammy professor show up somewhere, right? But not only do you respect the professor, you sign up for debt for the professor to F yourself over potentially and even your potential future and loved one's future with this professor person. if you didn't also drop something and lean over to pick it up in front of the professor in between class, how much respect you got a professor who's selling you, your future, potentially your family, right on down the river or up the right on up the river. They're selling you up the river to the money changers usury, whether that Uncle Sam or not, whether that title this and that, government student this and that. Yeah, but it's still about interest, so it's still money changer like that. Sadducees, Pharisees, money changer like that, like that. So, but then here go this person, this upstart dipshit wannabe self-style hack artist thing, speaking, but also according to real true congruence, long enough to make this many. Damn it, you talking like this? You gotta be. Are you undercover? So you're asking me if I'm undercover, right? Have you been? So if I'll answer that. But before I answer that, and not to be taking shots or like not to be like trying to sound tough and shit, because I'll probably have my ass handed to me by anyone in here, even someone asking that question. But it's a fair question. But if I'm a undercover, have you been to college before? Just have you been to college? If you're asking, am I undercover? Have you been to college before? Have you been to higher education? Asking me if I'm undercover. If you have been to higher education, were one of your teachers undercover? Undercover money people, undercover you, a money changer or F you over worse. Signing you up for debt will mess you over worse, potentially, or as bad as a damn me undercover cop. Were your professors not undermining your future the same way that an undercover cop would undermine your future? But would you not bat an eye about getting on with them, showing them respect, or not thinking twice about who these people are in front of you? A damn professor like that, a ranking person like that in your community, a statured person, influential person, another YouTuber, influencer, if they have any economic incentive to be speaking to you whatsoever. Because you notice my videos aren't monetized. If they are, I don't know about that shit. So I haven't received a penny for this or really sought one out directly. But still, it would come up a question, am I undercover? But you wouldn't think that, okay, am I undercover? But are these people in your life, are they not undermining you worse than someone that would potentially be undercover? Are they not? But the deeper thing I wanted to say is that the way your manner of speech will betray a lot about you, but also wherever your feet are cannot be falsified. So if you are somewhere under as undercover or as a real artist, I haven't presented myself on this channel as anything but a artist and a content creator creating offering ideas. But whether I am undercover or could be undercover, you can't isolate that from where my feet are at right now. Where whatever I have ever wanted to be, thought to be, tried to be, got to be, had to be, not gotten to be anymore, any of that. And also who I'd be aligned with, who I'd be reporting to, who would be looking out for me or not looking out for me, or if I'd be looking out for myself, or what my objectives are for myself, is that you can't take that away from where my feet are. So I'm not gonna just blast where I'm at right now. But I would just say that you may pick out different clues about my environment in different videos that I make. The only thing I can say about my background is where are my feet in these videos? What is the context? How do I sound like? How do I look like next to my environment? What would seem to be my reason? I'll say that in a lot of these videos, like some of these videos, like on these videos, right? You go back in my channel, right? On part of my channel, there's a part where you can see that my health had been affected. I was close to at nearly risked losing traction with my health because of my circumstance. And I had some unique circumstances that were misfortune, but also fortunate in bumping into an apothecary in Old Town, Albuquerque. I'll say that the way that I appear in those videos, what prompted me to leave my vicinity, right? Because I had to get the hell out of somewhere, right? The way and the reason and the timing that I had to get the hell out of somewhere before you could start to see my health impacted on those videos in the catalog, especially as you start to see motorcycle type stuff, that wasn't because I was having somebody have my back like that. That wasn't because I was checking in with this one that also trained me how to do this and let me know if shit went bad, go over here. If shit went left, go right over here. I didn't have that shit going on to be appearing like that in them videos like that. Then too, in them videos, and even if I did, I would have had more support that wouldn't let my health get that bad in them videos like that. Not to front like that. Hey man, we're gonna have your ass get up on here and look like a jackass and also risk your health so that you can convince some people to be down with you and shit because we got you undercover and shit. But don't worry if you all the way fuck yourself over to your out of your health and shit like that because we got your back and shit like that, right? But then too, my purposes for going to where I was going to, there wasn't actually an economic incentive because my ass, I was trying to get the hell out of a left turn past worky where I grew up. And that place, I'm saying in this video that the Southwest is a beautiful people, the culture, and it's artistic. And sometimes you can't tell the difference between a business and an artistic loft or a venue accommodation and just a regular house, how beautiful the people and place are. I was trying to go back where the last place I had seen rock and roll had been Albuquerque like that. But then I had some people, it didn't go over cool in Albuquerque because I was out on hard times. And also, it just didn't go well like that. So I picked it up and I went where I also had the last remnant of who I thought were family that had a big, nice fuck you waiting for me when I got there in Southern California like that. Sunny California hadn't always been sunshine. And even as your family go, it turned out when I got somewhere shit went bad like that because of that. But also, I also had friends north of that in Los Angeles that were this and that song, this and that school of this and that music, this and that. I've been talking with you this and that through the whole damn pandemic, supporting you, subsidizing your school, bantering with that, believing in you, thinking you believe in me. This time through the pandemic, then I get traction with music, this and that. Then I get in hard times, but I found my way the hell past Albuquerque, where I love, to the land of angels, this and that. And also, I got the chops, like we talked about, that it's about the music and stuff, right? But is there anything you can you give me half a clue? Can you respond to my call? Nah, man. So I'm just saying that that'd be hard to fake, but just the fact that I could fake it or how I'd fake it or where my feet would be or how believable my feet would be in these vicinities, it speaks to the damn truth about who anyone is. Wherever you are, it got to be, it's some function of where you were born. So that's had to do with who your family are and what they were on and what they pass on to you and your own choices. So I'm just saying, man, you picked up enough clues in these videos and shit, how I look like and shit, and my feet are where they're at. And I can't fake where they're at. And I'm just saying that the way they got to be here, it hadn't been about uh this and that. Then the other day, a couple weeks ago, a brother asked me, "Hey man, this I got off a train. I'm like, man, I like that's a mean ass jacket, man." And then he struck up a conversation. Oh, where is this located? This and that. And then he told me about a lot of cool shit. He's like, he told me another brother, but also yeah, you could. But I'm not saying you're undercover. But I don't know. You could be undercover. This and that. But all I'm saying is that I met you a couple blocks away from a bartending school because I'm trying to get to a bartending school. So because I like tip money, it's better than other kind of money. And shit, bogus shit been going bad for a while, especially like with family and shit. Even as I'm actually getting on the cool shit. So I'm still trying to figure out on a bartending school and shit where you see me meeting you right here and shit off the train and shit. But I'm not to be mad about or cop an attitude, but I'm just saying you had this and that. The word undercover came up, this and that. But you're also meters yards away from a bartending school where I'm trying to get to and shit. So I didn't actually put myself up to get to a bartending school so that I could meet you and learn about what you got going on. Because I'm about to get compensated for that. I didn't get compensated for that or get offered to get compensated for that. So I'm just saying that your feet don't lie. Wherever whatever you're about is where your feet are at. Um, but um, Um, but I do believe in justice, you know, and like, see, justice, it ain't, so a lot of people do, so undercover, right? Do you know what undercover means? A police officer is a professional criminal. That's what a police officer is. They catch criminals. It take one to know one. It also take one to catch one. So a police officer is a professional criminal. And real crime happens. It is way more savvy than people think. Like, so you actually can't protect yourself with just mere firearms or just mere training. You actually need, there's a social component and an actual, like, so you actually need social graces and understanding and awareness that come from your background and your talent to make you good as a criminal, whether you're on the side of the law or not. So police officers, they have, like, they work with intelligence. A police officer would get over on somebody better with intelligence than with guns and training. But also, so would a bad actor get over on a police officer better with graces and socializing and intelligence than with guns and training per se. But I believe in justice, you know. Like I think, you know, I'm gonna be honest, man. You gotta pick, right? So everybody tough, right? Everybody is about, everybody is about they like rap music, they like hip hop, wherever their background. Everybody like that. There used to be this movie, I forget what it's called, and this dude bumping hip hop, and then some real people walk by and he turned it down and he put the music down like that. That's everybody else, man. Everybody to a different degree. Everybody likes to be tough, but nobody wanna wear it or like show it. Like let your real colors show. Like just like you got the gay pride parade, you don't also got the hip hop parade or fuck the police parade. But if that's really who you are, if you say fuck the police, if you want to be organized about it, or you want to be strong about it, don't hide in the dark. Don't victimize people in the dark and then say that that's cool. Be outside with it and say fuck the police, but also do it collectively as a group. We don't like the police bothering us. We don't like the police locking us up justly or unjustly. We like to either, we think that the police are taking advantage of us when we're not breaking the law, or they're not letting us break the law the way we want to break the law. So we're going to come together and show our face and say that we would like to organize for the right to not be interfered with by the police, whether we are breaking the law or sometimes not. That's what we want. You'd be stronger coming outside than to hide with it. The only thing you achieve by hiding with it is victimizing people who likely are in a worse position and using leverage on other vulnerable people. So I'm saying is that wherever you are, be honest. So I'm gonna be honest. I believe in justice, right? I believe in justice. I think that justice, rightness, is better than wrong. I think that a person's ability to work as hard as they can and also as hard as they want to and be compensated equitably based on their output and the risk that they sustain doing that, and to have a viable future for doing that, to have equitable opportunities for doing that, repercussions also when failing for doing that. I think that that's worthwhile and that's worth a person. And that's also worth fucking someone over that would otherwise fuck someone else over that's doing that, as the person that's fucking them over is not willing to take those same labors and same risks. I think it would be willing to fuck that person over. I think it would be, but not to lie though. That's the thing. So when I was young, I knew people, like real people that know about the streets. There's a certain hand in glove relationship between the streets and them people, the law. Them people, them laws are not far away from them streets. And then when people are really banking in them streets, they're not far away from them laws. So it's actually the ends of a spectrum overlap. The streets are the same thing as them laws at the highest tier, because them laws are better and they actually made the streets. So you're saying you're from the streets, but them laws actually paid for the streets and paved the streets and maintain the streets and what goes on the streets, if you want to be all the way out there. But also them laws are also criminals, and they're not different than the people that are them streets. So the streets are them laws and them laws are them streets, if you're honest about it. And so it's actually, it's dynamic, and you can't say whether the chicken came before the egg or anything is all the way good and bad. According to the great MJ himself, you can't be who you are with all the things that make you who you are, good and bad, but also such is life. But if I had to choose one or the other, if I had to choose right or wrong for myself and another, I'd choose right. I'd choose justice. But I'm not saying that the laws are just all the time. But I know that sometimes, like, if things aren't that cut and dry, because there's some of the things that the law people do is it can be just and it makes life decent, but also some of the things that the streets do hold them accountable. And I'm saying that justice, like for me, I grew up around a bogus family, because my family member, the person who was supposed to be looking out for me, was overdoing alcohol while I was yet a child, so much that they lost their health off of it, and they still struggle with that each moment of every day to the present day. Every moment of their existence for the last 10 years, but probably before that, before they knew what they were dealing with, was compromised by their choice to put alcohol before their very child, but also their career before their very child, that both of which stressed them. They somehow weren't man enough to handle raising a child and they weren't man enough to concede the care and attention and resources that it takes to raise a child well without taking on heavy rigors of academics to ostensibly do well for themselves as it would, because if you take on an academic, there's nothing more arduous that you can do in life according to yoga than to pursue knowledge. The different things I would attend knowledge, like even like the thing I say in this channel, different hardships I got for myself, that's imminent and guaranteed for someone that would partake anything, that pursue anything earnestly, including knowledge. So when you pursue knowledge while you have a family, you're going to school so you can better your family, right? I don't buy that. I bought a lot of things, but I don't buy that. You're going to school so that you can better yourself and then your family, if it come to that, if you get to do that. But when you take on risk as a student, you take on a lot of risk as a student. You take on a lot of debt, financial liability risk, but also you compromise your some of your mental health and your bandwidth to otherwise enjoy life for yourself and that to the people that depend on you, because they have to also learn how to enjoy life. But if all they see is you suffering and drudging through different academic rigors and also the politics that go with that and the bandwidth that goes with that, you're taking your family through the hardship of studying, but also the dangers that come with that of extending yourself like that. So I grew up around that, like that you didn't know that academics could be that bogus, that college could be that higher education could be that bogus, but it had yet been that bogus because it's still part of Pharisees and Sadducees and money changers, that whole thing. But then also you couldn't either handle what it takes to be a man enough to raise a boy and then a second son, because you had a second son while you were yet a student, and could you actually didn't have you weren't able to give a first son what they need in terms of attention, but also resources, such as that you're pursuing an actual high degree while you're how can anyone watching this, right? You're a parent, right? How much energy does it take? So if you were to have somebody back, right? If you were to have somebody, if you were to help somebody with rides, right, from one sport, you're helping someone, a cousin, a niece, a nephew, anyone, with rides from one sport. How much time does that take to help someone? Just have anyone watching this? Have you supported a school age child to get through one sport for one season? Not only does that take a lot of your time to do that when you're doing that, but you have to have a life that's viable that affords you enough time to do that. So if you take at what it is to contribute rides for one sport for one season, the standpoint to do that, it not only when doing that, but just to have a life that's viable, that you would be available during that time of day. Because like even the great Kevin Samuels, he's like, hey man, these ladies, they want a millionaire and someone that can have time to go to the PTA meeting. They don't you don't know how. So what Kevin Samuel was saying is that a lady want her a high value man that is a six figure kind of man, damn near sometime multiple six figure, if not millionaire. But if it's gonna be that, she ain't wrong to want what she want. He ain't wrong to be that. But she wrong to think that he about to be at the PTA meeting. You're damn right he can't be at the PTA meeting because he about a high value man, right? But Kevin Samuel wasn't the first one to want to be high value, but he was the first one to actually concede that you can't be high value and go to PTA meeting. You can't do such a thing, according to him. So I'm not even saying PTA meeting because that probably take a lot of that probably maybe you take more engagement than one sport for one season for one child. But if you could help one child for one season for one sport during the time of day it take to do sport, could you be a high value millionaire type person? Probably hell no, right? But could you also be a person pursuing a higher degree? That's interesting. Can you but that would be you're the parent too, right? Can you support a child, their resources, the wherewithal doesn't mean your mind, it means your resources. Do you have the finance, the wherewithal to support a family, much less two children, economically, but also the attention, but also the attention during school hours or the school activities? while pursuing a higher education, while paying for that education and the family and the child and yourself and your spouse. Can you afford that shit? So if you appreciate that my parent were doing that when I was growing up, that was some ball. Now I ain't mad about it because I wouldn't have got in this fool if it first had been ball like that. But that's some baldy stuff like that. That baldy now. That baldy now. I ain't saying you baldy. I ain't saying you a body at button clock, but that baldy now. That body. Yeah, oh, that be that did nothing. And I always got the boy like that, a strong boy like that, dirty boy like that. Got him put in the yeah for the football, didn't like the down, but the boy good to the back, good to go to basketball like that. Train himself up in the basketball like that. Nobody helping like that. Nobody out there the court like that, watching like that. Also don't like being in the house with too much stress like that because you're doing the high degree like that. And you also can afford to do the alcohol like that and to pay for the alcohol like that. And to sustain the hangover like that and to be a bit like tipsy like that and have the privacy and the audacity and a little bit of a piece of the space to be tipsy like that. And you get on down in the liquor store like that, ain't far away from the dude family house in the liquor store, the quarter liquor store, right there, Albuquerque, next to the cemetery. But you didn't know that the quarter liquor store it gets you about a right quarter moon how you fall into the cemetery. Sometimes in the cemetery they make noise at night when the moon that such it had been a quarter like that, but you know it had been the quarter liquor store right there. Good to go, Albuquerque, like right there. Not too far off let it go like that, right there, Albuquerque, right there. By the 7-Eleven too, right there, quarter liquor store like that. You got time to get on down like that, but did you bring a boy like that to the quarter liquor store? And did it have a little cold one? You got the regular old liquor store, the spirit, the warm and shit, the warm beer like that. But you like the cold beer too, like that, right? And the dude got the cold freezer like that. And it smell like alcohol in that food. Like, you the kid know that something ain't right about the alcohol smell like that, but it got the candy like that. The candy the boy like that with the breath mints like that. Bring it to the party like that. At least he got him some candy and they got to see the daddy by the liquor store in the cold cooler like that and get a little candy before you go and throw a couple back by your other sturdy partner doing the same damn thing to his own boy and let him play the video game way up there late like that. To get to go to eat a little candy like that. We throw him back like that. It smell like alcohol like that. All in breath like that. And you talking this and that like that. You talking about the right stuff like that, but you also got the alcohol coming off your breath like that. It's a little bit strange to kill like that. Say this and that, get to say it like that, but the breath is offending the kid like that. Make the boy, grown ass boy, feel like a little girl when the dad breathing on cold beer down and breath on the boy like that. Tell him this and that, trying to give him a horrible example like that, but you always tell him which way left and right, up and down like that, and time to go to bed like that. And I drunk like that, about to tell the boy to go to bed like that, wake up with Rick Haynes and the boy like that. The boy wake up on time like that, want to go do something cool on Saturday, play basketball like that, but the daddy get drunk like that. Then the daddy wake up and get drunk like that, working on paper like that. Don't get where the boy at like that. You can afford all that shit. Boo, you didn't even be that high rolling that not there, high rolling there. But then you run out of quarters now. You run past quarter now. You run out of quarter now. You don't want to go in the cemetery now. Now you got to pay for your health now. Somebody got to pay for their health now. You got to put you on up now. You got to pay for that shit now. If this and that ain't working now, you're gonna have to be a machine like that. You know the boy pay like that. So the boy pay the childhood like that. So you be a bit on money, but it remain something like that. Then you lose your health like that. Going as man, but you lose your health. Somebody got to pay for this shit like that. Man, the fuck the boy though like that. The boy somehow should ride with his mama like that. With decent good to go like straight to the hair out of prison. Somehow they ain't had dad like that. But then he help you now and get on back to your health now. And don't give a damn about it. Still boy fuck the boy if you had a chance to do it. Go on back to school if you had a chance to do it. The school wouldn't have been bogus because you rather been going on school to have family than bogus. Damn shit. But it's shit crazy like that, man. But that's how I grew up. But then I had some other family friends. I knew some people. So all I'm saying is that when I grew up like that, I'm not saying that's the worst shit, but it damn sure wasn't the best shit. When I grew up like that, the only person that actually spoke, because see, the most beautiful thing that you'll ever see in this life, even more beautiful than music, there's levels to things. The only thing that's actually more beautiful than music, and even the most beautiful part of music, is when someone speak to your storm. When you got a storm that you've been dealing with that long and present, as it's more than you asked for, than you signed up for, than you could actually afford. That storm too much for you. When someone speak to that storm, whether the storm listened to them or not, but they actually speak to that storm, that's beautiful. And for me, it had been some formidable people not far away from rough lifestyles themselves. That's why they could see in me. They could see something of themselves in me because they came from equally difficult background, a different iteration, but equally difficult. And they could see what is happening. They could see things for what they were. Sometimes it take a real type savvy person to see things for what they were, to see that. And them type people that I knew, they damn sure wasn't them laws, but I seen them stand up to people, and they would stand up to them laws or them streets, stand up to them laws or them streets. if it had been appropriate and called for. That's what inspired me. And that's the only time I saw something that sounded like and looked like and felt like justice for myself. But I also seen them do that for a lady, because yeah, and you boy used to, yeah, we used to climb. It's Minnesota is Minnesota the coldest state, but it's also can, and so, I seen him stand up to some for on behalf of an old lady, because I'm like, damn man, when you're up in a store like that, when you're in a like in a, I'm not sure what. So this had been a historical neighborhood, and this is also a great place to get fast food. But what the hell do you call that? Like when the wall come to the bottom like that, and you got that little edge like that thing that line it up like that, like that. What the hell is that thing called? And what is that thing? And it's a little bit scary that I'm only just now seeing this. And then at that time, you got I'm not thinking like that. Then you got a lady that's being intimidated by someone, and I seen someone stand up on her behalf, and that inspired me. And that's when I said that justice is greater than the streets and the law. But justice is sophisticated, and it's savvy, and it's interchangeable, and it's you can't exactly lay your finger on what had come right or wrong. You just know how someone feel. So the way I feel about it is, I think that justice is, a lot of people want to be cool and stuff, right? Like a lot of people, I think it's good for people to smoke cigarettes so that you can know that cigarettes ain't about shit. Yeah, man. So let the boy smoke. And I'm not saying encourage it. Let him smoke a square. Let him smoke a damn square, so that it ain't scary. Because a cigarette can be scary if you, and that's that horrible shit. But also, that's where they want people scared, right? The health class, they ostensibly don't want you to take cigarettes, but they also want you scared, because fear is part of medicine and the intimidation of the armed services. Both, they both employ fear, and they're counting on you to be fear for them to let their nuts hang, because they show themselves as though they're not afraid, but they want you. It also it pays to have people that are afraid, because when you're afraid, you're not as creative and strong, and you're subject when you're afraid. Fear and being subject and fear are one and the same. So it actually is a deeper thing, is that, like, stay the hell off of cigarettes, but also make cigarettes this bad shit, so that you're afraid of cigarettes and you can't actually express yourself with any lingering fear in you. So much as you won't touch a cigarette, your ass still scared like that. But also, here go this one, and now you can show everybody how you got the nutsack, because you ain't scared of puff on you, little something that'll fuck you over like that. But them other fools scared, because them fools have been some bitches like that, because they scared of the tobacco wacko like that, because we the wacko with the real tobacco, and we ain't scared of it, even though we wacko for jacking with the tobacco. But fuck them bitches over there, because we ain't scared of the tobacco. But also, we appropriated and we gentrified the real people that pioneered the tobacco, such as we can't see them, and we probably don't puff it how they did, how they used to do the teeth now. And you didn't have, just to be down like that, you ain't gotta be a chief just to be down. Anybody that guy really got heart, you got enough heart, and you respect your community and the land, you now some different degree of a real you know what I'm saying? And but you ain't gotta be, you can be that, you ain't gotta be the chief now. But I say that all them over the spread with the tobacco wacko, they ain't doing it the same way, and they probably abusing it or overdoing it and profiting it and wasting money and jacking around and fucking themselves over worse than the regular people that did it the way they did it now, because they cutting now. But you kick them off the land and you appropriate their culture and they practice it, but then you want to puff on the old tobacco record, how you had been your real Indian. But the way far I know, the Indian, yeah, they do the tobacco record, but they could also around themselves. Because if you ask me, I wouldn't try to really outrun me no Cherokee or brother like that, real thoroughgoing good Cherokee. Any time period, I wouldn't try to outrun them, man. I bet you probably could out puff it and outrun it, because it had been both their culture to puff when appropriate and run when appropriate and get down with it and get down with it, get down and abstain when it's appropriate and enjoy when it's appropriate and celebrate when it's appropriate and in and out of season when it's appropriate, and respect the land, respect the animal, respect the plants, respect yourself, respect your water. But you had fuck all that, man. Just give me the tobacco wacko and let me get the money like that. And I'm about to fuck everything on over there. Don't give it like that. But them other food that don't touch the tobacco, they some bitches like that. But I'm about to do it how I have seen the other boy do. But I'm still appropriating the thing I don't do the same way. So it may not be as healthy like that. But I'm still about to appropriate that thing like that. But everybody want to be cool like that. Everybody want to be cool like that until it's time to be real. But if you want to be real, I say that justice is better. Justice is right is better than wrong. People should be able to choose who they want to be, how they want to be with, and they shouldn't be judged as they're not taking advantage of other people. And if I had, and I seen Justice before. I seen in Justice. It's kind of like that movie Training Day, where if you watch the movie Training Day, you actually weren't sure about you weren't sure about Denzel Washington the whole time of Training Day. Is he actually good or bad? Is he's, you know, he's a dog, but is he a sheepdog or is he a wolf? And I think that some of that film, like, that's actually based on a real person. The film Training Day is based on a real man. There, and that's an example of how I was saying that in the at the broadest end of a spectrum, at if you were in a street lifestyle, at the higher tier of the streets, it's actually the same thing, law enforcement and the streets. And to that vein, I think that man, that type of man, is also who's accredited. I'm not saying that man himself, but that type of man, that type of savvy police. It's interesting. Sometimes you don't put two and two together. So New York City is the home of the hip hop police, right? A special contingent and cohort of police officers, cadre members, officers, probably by this point, social media experts that specifically target, approach, and engage people with hip hop lifestyles and not far away from hip hop lifestyles. But that too, the Biggie Smalls, he was assassinated in, I think, in New York City. He was a New York rapper, but it's appreciated. It can be appreciated in some sources online that Biggie Smalls may have been engaged by a higher degree of a police officer that's not actually different than the streets. It's actually still a street person. Like, a lot of times you might mouth off to the police and stuff because you think it's good to go because you're not actually the streets, but they're actually I got that off of, there's a person called Star, the Star Report. He had been on Everyday Struggle and I think Hot 97 in New York City, and he has a brilliant channel on YouTube called the Star Report, and he talks about a lot of topical issues, especially as they impact the Black community and also different people about like hip hop. And he has some recurring guests, like one from New York who's hilarious, but then another couple from different ones from California, and one of them from California was a savvy Hispanic brother, very similar to the brother who laid a finger on exactly what suburb I had been lollygagging around as a kid. He could appreciate that in my mannerisms, and that brother was saying that at the real higher end of both the streets and them laws is it's the same thing. It's a workable relationship because all things settle as politics. Life is chaos and order, chaos from order and order from chaos. But what that amounts to is a little bit of a workable relationship, kind of like there's actually nothing more meaner than a stalemate, but also because a stalemate can amount to like siege warfare, which is a war crime, or long entrenched battle. Like, you could say that something of the wars in the Middle East, like say the war in Afghanistan, that was actually a little bit of a stalemate. It was an ongoing stalemate, and the and the reason that it would have been a stalemate, I don't think that the Afghan forces were necessary. They were committed. They would never change. They have not changed for centuries. That's their land. They were never going to change. But as far as the fighting and tactics go, the way that they had that long of a war, a stalemate, that the people in Afghanistan didn't send someone, heaven. I'm not trying to war game nothing, but that they didn't send someone just straight to America to go straight to the. Oh, I need to talk to the boss. Who's the boss? You're the boss. Fuck you. The war is over. That didn't happen, or that the Americans didn't do something really like an atrocity to end that. The way that war was able to go that long, it had to go that long. um, I think it's because of the rules of engagement is why that would be that long. Is that because of the rules of engagement, the tactics, the strengths, the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities, the advantages of both of those people, is that it couldn't end but in a stalemate because things are going to come down to the rules of engagement. What are the rules? You think that war is the farthest thing away from rules, but sometimes war is actually the most of rules because you can't actually get outside of rules in this life because there will be repercussions. You can ignore rules, you can break rules, but you can't get past repercussions. And those repercussions are going to form. They're going to carve out territory and like a standoff. In the worst case, that's a stalemate that amounts to years on end of endless war and endless suffering on both sides, if you're honest. But that too, the truth will prevail in anything. So I would imagine, I think that how you think about that, right? You're getting all this gear, all this $1 million of equipment, $1 million helicopter, $1 million bazooka. Your own training is worth lots of money, equipment, gear, and then you go over across the world and kick someone else's door in like that. You and all your your buddies that have paid this many billions, trillions of dollars to be there. Are you actually righteous? Does that represent righteous? Does it represent righteousness to spend $1 trillion in gear to go and lose to people in poverty? If you had to ask me, I'd say the truth would be on the other side. That's what, and we live by the truth in us. But that too, the way that war dragged on and cost so many lives on both sides is because the rules of engagement are like a stalemate like that. But that's also the broader life itself, chaos and order. It defines itself, it settles as chaos and order. But in the worst sense, that'd be like a stalemate where there's suffering. In the best sense, that's a workable relationship, workable politics, viable politics. And that's what the streets are when, and there's nothing ever actually settled in life. Life is ceaseless motion and change, but so is actually justice in the streets and the state, ceaseless wavering and change in that it's not, you can't say who's exactly good or bad all the way and where exactly right and wrong is except for when you can feel it. But so that person that the movie Training Day is built based off of was a real person in California that had to do with he was at a high he was a very influential person in the community, and he had to use very savvy tactics to manage the whole entire. So they say that according to Tar Streak Bay, all of uh, the police precincts in the entire United States, they're replicated off of the police of New York. So when you say the police of America, you're saying the gangs of New York because the police were actually a form of gang. They still are. Like if you've ever been around like real military like cohorts and peers, they're a lot like gang. They're a type of gang. They're a form of gang, but they have a different code and a way of operating. Same thing with bikers. Same thing with street gangs. Even same thing with a lot of professions. A lot of professions, according to Tashrik Bey, are replicated off of the Dutch East India Trading Company, and that is pirates. So a lot of any profession, any venue you would have frequent, they're actually some form or iteration or replication or reality of piracy, whether they're ethical about it or not. Because you can have pirates that are ethical and not. You have the pirates on this side, you have the cowboys on this side, you have the native people on this side, you have the pirates on this side, you have the sailors slash marines on this side, you have the insurgents on this side, you have the military state sanctioned forces on this side, and then you probably have mercenaries and renegades, which are like a joker and all that to make things to shake things up. Not to be light about that, but that's all. And you can't say on any of that who is exactly totally good or bad, but I would say the power is with the people and the truth is with the people and the justice is with the people on all sides of that. So if you had to ask me, I'd say the indigenous people, a lot of times the native people, and the poor people. If I had to guess, would be the most congruent. But all right, I'm gonna keep rolling. So what I was saying is that all right, I'm gonna keep rolling. So what I was saying is that so you can't really say you can't judge anything in this life because none of us have this standpoint to judge, but you can feel things and you have instincts. But I'm saying that the as justice go like so the in America like you have if you look at New York City is a lot of the trajectory, but also the present reality of America and the way things are done in America. It has to do with New York City, not only New York City, but New York City. If you look at New York City is very dense population. Any place you go, like for me, I grew up in like a small town, relatively speaking. I most of my first cognizant memories of life, I was in Minneapolis when I was very young, but by the time I was in elementary, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. At that, between 150,000 and maybe 200,000 people. At about that, I would imagine. It seemed like a big city as a kid, but it's even a little bit of a, it's a smaller city because I live in the Twin Cities. The greater Twin Cities metro area is about 3 million people now. And it's a good sized city. It's one of probably about the 14th, 12th or 14th biggest city in the country. But if you go to Albuquerque, New Mexico from the Twin Cities, Albuquerque, it feels like a smaller town and it moves at a different pace. They can drive fast as hell, but it's a completely different pace of vibrating and interacting. And then some of the dynamics, the circumstances that would transpire based on the cadence of people and the lifestyles and the degree of privacy and autonomy and space that people have, and then some of the economic rigors and opportunities that play into that, and would either draw that many or that little of people, and how viable it would be. It really impacts the experience of a place. But when I grew up in New Mexico, I had beautiful experiences, but life felt very real. It felt like you can still meet people, have friends, cadence, and some of the what's viable economically. And as you get to Minnesota, Albuquerque is not a small city. It was about 150 to 200,000 in the 90s, and then you had some expansion and rapid growth. I think Intel was out there. You had a lot of, I've said in this video that there's a lot of science in New Mexico, or in this channel, but you had Intel came out there, that you had the Intel Pentium something processors that was very popular all the way back in the 90s, and it recruited a lot of jobs. And there's a few other like very salient industries in Albuquerque. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but I know some of them. But then you had like an area called, like, I think it's called Rio Rancho, towards the west part of Albuquerque, that was it was blowing up then in the late 90s, and I think it's blown up a lot since then, and it's fed that. So I would imagine now Albuquerque is probably anywhere from like maybe 300,000 to getting close to maybe about 400. I would say maybe 300 or 400,000 as most generous you could give the population of Albuquerque, very roughly. I'm ballparking, compared to the Twin Cities, which is maybe about 3 million at least. With the greater Twin Cities like that, that's a lot more people, a lot more compact, a different pace of life, different times that things would be open and not, but also a different level of diversity and a different form of etiquette and communication and shorthand or long form communication that's viable, necessary, imminent, and unavoidable at that different scale of city and the dynamics. Within New York City, it's probably bigger, even going back 100 years, it's probably bigger than Albuquerque is now, than Twin Cities are now, was probably New York City, even going way back. But New York City was very dense, very maybe a lot of opportunities to gain and also lose, a lot of heavy poverty. Like sometimes when they talk about the boroughs of New York, like you got Queens, Brooklyn. I'm not a native of New York or very familiar with it, but I know at least you have Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, and maybe Yonkers. But of those, they represent different culture and subculture. That's where we also get hip hop from. Clearly, I'm not trying to break news with that, but you also have like something called Manhattan. Kevin Samuels himself he was proud that he had lived in Manhattan at one time, and he was proud of his apartment building and the amenities that it had during the time of pandemic. Speaking prior to that, he was about his experiences prior to that. He was speaking about how proud he was of Manhattan. But that's an example of how New York City, it's very, you could say it's cloistered in how close it is geographically, the different boroughs. Some of them are landlocked or sea locked in that they're like the rapper Joel Santana. I used to listen to him like way back in the day, like damn near 25 years ago in high school. But he would say on some of his, you can hear more of people's insights when you have more experience when you listen to them. But he's saying he had the song that was like da 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 na 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 da da. It's like one of the most of Gusto, one of the most songs of that you'll ever hear of Gusto. It was one of Joel Santana, but he also said on that channel, he was talking about like, I think it's called Okay,